Welcome to All
Right.
Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. We're here with Baba Zaid, and we also have a special guest on our special Juneteenth edition. So we decided to, know our history, have an understanding of what's up. I mean, my opinion is we didn't really, did we really ask for this to be a federal holiday? I don't know. Maybe a lot of people were, but I know we wanted police efforts against police violence, and don't lynch us and stuff like that. But Juneteenth is here, so we should decide to educate ourselves and make ourselves better because of it. And we're honored to have this guest. So Zaid, how are you doing, man?
Just as busy as ever. We'll get into it as the night progresses. We're going to be in the street tomorrow for Juneteenth, right? Otherwise, I'd be down there with that sister right there down in Cape May, right? Because that's really quite a space to be in and quite a new development. It's nice to have something good to talk about in Jersey. That's tough.
Yeah.
It's a tough place to have.
So Zaid, introduce our guest. So Zaid, introduce our guest. Introduce this good news. Tell us what's in Cape May, and let's start this conversation.
Way down in the southern part of the up south state of New Jersey is this beautiful beach town called Cape May. Why is this, Cat? Once upon a time, it was a place where the great warrior ancestor Harriet Tubman roamed. And she did some incredible things going through that space. And her trail, up and down the eastern coast of this country is the stuff of legend. But the fact that Jersey is a part of that legend is something that's underappreciated and little known. That may change soon with the advent of the emergence of the groundbreaking of the Harriet Tubman Museum in Cape May on Juneteenth Day. And we're pleased to have with us Linda Thompson Towns of the Harriet Tubman Museum to walk us through this fresh embark on this incredible legacy of this incredible ancestor. Madam, welcome. Welcome, dear Queen. How you feeling? Good to have you with us at All Politics Are Local.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Very excited to be a part of the Juneteenth recognition and definitely to share with New Jersey our work at the Harriet Tubman Museum and just getting prepared for our formal opening of the museum, which starts Juneteenth. So happy to be here.
Let's do this way, because one of the things about our folks who are not terribly well traveled, they have certain preconceptions about certain places and spaces in their mind and don't know how to conceptualize us in other spaces, right? You think of Jersey, for Black folks, you might think of the shore, you might think of Atlantic City, you'll think of Newark, you'll think of Camden, you'll think of Jersey City, but rarely would a town like Cape May come up. Now, you've been in Cape May basically all of your life, right?
All my life.
Why don't you tell us about, what is the Cape May story for African Americans in the state?
The Cape May story is that it is a very small seashore resort, but it's right at the tip of New Jersey and right across the Delaware Bay. So it is a perfect location if enslaved people could get across the bay from Delaware, which was one of the slave states, to New Jersey, Cape May. They could be a part of the Underground Railroad and moved up to Freedom, to Philadelphia, and on up to Canada from there to be free people. What we have been fortunate to find out is that this place actually Cape May attracted many abolitionists. There were a good number of Quakers here who supported the move of the Underground Railroad. And so what we found is that not only was Stephen Smith here, but William Still, who was a part of the Philadelphia Vigilance Committee. Many of them had summer places that they came down to Cape May. And so it became a place to sort of meet, to plan, and in that same space to earn money to finance enslaved people and their journeys. And that is one of the reasons why Harriet Tubman ended up in Cape May.
Wow, wow. Well, let's contemporize this a little bit. I mean, how were things in this incredible town when this country was at a very volatile crossroads? And of course, I'm thinking about the 1960s and whatnot. We know that,
Well, I think Cape May has always, the population of African Americans in Cape May during the 60s probably was about 30% at that time. So there was a good, strong presence. In many cases, they were, they served the hotels, they served a lot of the homes of whites in Cape May. They were the cooks, they were, domestics, and some worked with the railroad. So we know that many of the African Americans during the 1960s generally had those types of service jobs. But interestingly enough, they did have their homes. As with every small town, there was a certain section of Cape May that the African Americans, most of their families lived in. That's, pretty typical. The irony is that today, even in the sections where they live, they are now not there anymore. And those houses that they own are now owned by whites. So there's been a diminishing population of African Americans in Cape May through the 2000s. And so this museum, even though we take the opportunity to highlight Harriet Tubman, we also share the story of the disappearing African-American community that once was so vibrant in Cape May.
Wow. Wow. In terms of your own journey,
that's the story of a lot of shore towns and maybe a lot of towns, because we know that often with, when attention comes to a town, our houses are sometimes the first to go and be replaced by bigger homes. And so, the stories get lost, the history gets lost. And what we're excited about is in the Harriet Tubman Museum, we get that opportunity to correct and to share what's not in our history books about Cape May.
And to reclaim also.
Reclaim, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
In terms of your own journey, I mean, when did it start for you? When did you realize that there was something special that that was about our people's presence in that town, and something important in that specialness that drew you to doing what you're doing?
Well, I'm a retired principal and superintendent, teacher, all the education jobs, so you're always a lifelong learner. As a child, I do remember my grandmother saying that there were enslaved people hidden in various houses in Cape May. And I knew that many of those houses have been torn down to be replaced by, very, rich, what we call mega mansions. So what happened to those stories? And I wanted to make sure that we recognize that, yes, we were a part of the Underground Railroad, and a very essential portion. In Harriet Tubman's obituary, it states that she had a headquarters in Cape May, New Jersey.
Right.
And so it was more than that. And the interesting piece of that is that many of these kinds of conversations were oral. So when we went to document it, even our museum's historian said, well, Linda, you can't do that because there's no documentation. And so I had to correct and say, a lot of our history is oral. And, in some cases it took for our historian to hear another white resident say, no, my grandmother said the same thing. And then it seemed to be confirmed that, yes, it did, or yes, that house did have a space. Some of the houses here, their Underground Railroad spaces, we've saved some of the wood from their homes, and some of it is in the Harriet Tubman Museum. And they were documented places of the Underground Railroad, homes that stored enslaved people.
I had an uncle, and I loved the hell out of this particular uncle, my great uncle, my grandfather's youngest brother. His name was James Bryant. He was in Lawnside. He settled in Lawnside, New Jersey. and wound up being mayor of Lawnside for some 4 terms. He had literally died in office towards the end of his 4th term. And Lawnside was one of those towns in southern Jersey that was a part of the Underground Railroad, and it very pronounced in its awareness of its legend, right, if you will, right. You sound like an old soul. I hear you talking about you and your grandma and that connect. That's that old soul kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
How would you say that consciousness was within the town itself? Did Cape May have that same kind of energy and vibration?
Well, Cape May is, it's about the dollar and it's about the tourism. And at first, they did not embrace the story. We know that. We know that because they did not embrace keeping homes that belong to African Americans. So when we began the Harriet Tubman Museum, a lot of it was about timing. At that particular moment, we were seeing a lot of social unrest in the country. We were seeing African American voices being uplifted. We were seeing the movie Harriet. Our journey was a lot about timing. It was not that Cape May stepped forward and said, "Oh, we think this is a great idea." Cape May stood back and said, "Let's see what happens here." When the Smithsonian Magazine cited the Harriet Tubman Museum of Cape May as one of the 10 most exciting new museums to open up in COVID, we started to get national attention, and Cape May could not ignore it. And that's where, and it's still, I don't think I can state strongly enough that there are many political threads to this journey. There are many very difficult conversations that we have to have in sharing the story of Harriet Tubman and other important African Americans in Cape May. They're delicate. And, that voice to come forth and say, yes, it did happen, and here's the documentation. Not everybody wants to hear it. Not everybody wants to even acknowledge it. If they did, it would be in our history books. It's not. Cape May students, and I've done several schools, many schools actually, and the kids will say, why isn't it in the history books? Why didn't we know, we live in Cape May, that Harriet Tubman was in Cape May? It's not in the history books. We've got to change that.
So yes, I hear that. Now I've got 2 brilliant young men who are about to jump in this conversation. One, both of them are teaching legends. I want you to appreciate that. They're also both educators, right? Both debate coaches, right? Okay. And one has got a big sister who's got a book out on Harriet Tubman, right? And at some point, we want to do our share to make sure that we connect you up, because she would be a good resource to help you on the journey in terms of Harriet's incredible legacy. So I want to bring in Jonathan Austin, our founding associate producer and co-host, and Chris Randall, right? One of our young hip hop masters and a brilliant researcher and young scholar in his own right. I know they have like a legion of questions that they want to jump in this conversation with. Okay. Don't you, Chris?
Actually, I was absolutely taken aback by your first when you first started talking, and you started talking about the history of Cape May, and you talked about how it was a home for abolitionists from all over that would come to Cape May, and would that be a place for them to work and plan and work? I mean, it was Cape May that spot of radicalism.
Yes. Well, listen, and right across from the Harriet Tubman Museum, a gentleman named Stephen Smith, who was one of the richest African Americans in the country in the 1800s. He was born a slave in Pennsylvania. He had a lumber and a coal business, and of course, he became so successful they burned one of his businesses down. But through the Philadelphia Vigilance Committee, his summer home is right across the street in Cape May. And so he built one of the first African-American resort hotels in Cape May, because of course, we did not stay on the beachfront with the whites, but he built one of them. But he also had a railway business that we believe he transported enslaved people up to Philadelphia. He was highly instrumental and funded a lot of the Underground Railroad, one of the major developers and planners. So Stephen Smith house is directly across the street in Cape May. So this area, Joseph Leach, there was a gentleman that owned a newspaper called the Ocean Wave in Cape May that spoke about enslaved people coming across the bay, and that we should be supportive of our ebony friends, and that we would do the same thing. And anybody who didn't and wouldn't try to get to freedom is a fool and not worthy the name of a man. So we had strong abolitionists in Cape May. The issue is getting the story out.
Wow. Mm-hmm, exactly.
Because one of the things they say about
names I haven't heard
is that you get a chance to hear stories that you haven't. I'm gonna ask you more questions about that, but I'm gonna ask Chris. I know he has some questions as well. So Chris Randall, welcome to All Politics Are Local.
How are you doing, sir? I am from Baltimore, which is Tubman City, which we affectionately, we're going to have to steal Harriet Tubman back. We're going to need that. We understand that Newark likes to do research in Cape May. We're going to need that. Thank you. It's fine. We've taken that. We have the first U.S. Black Supreme Court Justice. There's only ever been one. And so we're glad that one is from Baltimore as well. Y'all saw what I did there? Okay, good. I think one of the things that I wanted to know is, when I was doing some research for the show, can you explain to me the connection between the theology of your church and its relationship to Harriet Tubman? Like, was there something being preached or talked about from the pulpit that made it like a perfect match between Macedonia and that abolitionist time period, or is that a reach, or would you say that's accurate? Or?
Did we lose her? I think we may have lost her for a moment. I think we lost her.
We might have lost her for a second, and that was a great question. So Chris, what about theology?
So one of the things that came up in doing some research for the show is that Professor Anderson Towns talks a lot about the connection between Macedonia Church and Harriet Tubman, and I think that it was interesting to me when you think about what was it about that particular church, and what made that such a hotbed at the time, because as you look at the Black freedom struggle in its totality, there's always a connection between our spirituality and our liberation movement.
Indeed.
I don't think, even though I have my Friedrich Nietzsche shirt on, I'm probably gonna get rid of that by the time Dr. Jeffries get here. But
he's gonna be a little late.
That's good. That means I can wear my Nietzsche shirt for a few more minutes. But definitely got the shirt. I have a shirt around here. But one of the things that I thought was interesting is that if you look at the totality of the freedom struggle, of the Black freedom struggle in America in its totality, you see that there's a connection between our spiritual practice and our mobilization toward freedom. You can see that in Denmark Vesey, who's connected to the Mother Emanuel Church.
That's right.
Unfortunately, Dylan
Roof yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, Dylan Roof was more aware of that history than many of us.
How about that?
He actually was motivated by, he wanted to do what he did at the church to create a
wait. You said Dylan Roof? Wait. You said Dylan Roof was understood that history better than most?
No,
not a random hit.
When he was captured, he admits that he did research on the Mother Emanuel Church. And he figured that if he desecrated that sacred space in that way, that because of what it meant to Black people and our history, that it would cause a race war.
That's right. Not only that, I would dare say, and not too many folks talk about it. This is less on the spirituality question, but since you brought up Dylan Roof, and yesterday being the anniversary of the Emanuel 9 massacre. Oh, we got it back. I'll put a pin in that.
Not sure what happened.
That's all right. That's the cool space. We're gonna get past this one day too.
We're happy to have you back.
Right. Okay.
So, go ahead, Chris.
Now, did you hear the question that Chris asked?
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, Chris Randall, can you ask that question again?
Professor Anderson Towns, I wanted to know, is there a connection? I was doing some research for the show, and I want to know if there was a connection based on the research I was doing. There seems to be articulated by you and others that there's a connection between the Macedonia Baptist Church and the freedom struggle of our ancestors in the area around Cape May. Is there some connection between what was being preached in the pulpit or the community around Macedonia and that struggle, or is that a reach?
Well, I think, first of all, the Harry Tubman House, the Harry Tubman Museum, is the former parsonage to Macedonia Baptist Church. So this was the parsonage of all of our ministers. It was owned by our church, and so at one point it was owned by George Howe, a Quaker. So this house is on the New Jersey Historic Registry. So I'm sort of walking around so you can kind of see some of its space and how it's been, sort of renovated. But the Quakers, George Howe, donated it to Macedonia Baptist Church because they were in the middle of an African-American community. And they supported the Underground Road. They supported the movement and the success of African-Americans. So the church itself has always been Macedonia Center space. Specifically, one of our last ministers, Reverend Robert Davis, he taught Cape May community about Africa and its many contributions and the contributions of many famous African Americans in history. So one of the rooms in the Harry Tubman Museum is a room dedicated to Reverend Davis, and it has all these African artifacts in it. But I remember that when we were going through the 60s, and many of the mothers and the cooks and Reverend Davis, he actually said to some of the mothers and the cooks, we're in the 60s now. It's time to stop calling the woman of the house Mrs. It's time to start, picking up and calling them by their Mrs. name instead of ma'am and so forth. So he kind of was a trailblazer in that sense of waking up Cape May County to, our sense of being African American and proud. Because so many of us and of our parents, my grandmother, my great grandmother here worked in the white homes, cooking and cleaning. And listen, that wasn't lost on all of us as children. I mean, still everybody in Cape May that's African American has a side job. I still have, even though I was superintendent and principal, I always had a cleaning business in the summer. That just connects to my grandmother. That's what she did. Wow. And we started as chambermaids as early as 14. And I've been, I still work in the cleaning business and still keep a couple clients that I do. But that's just my roots. That's who Cape May is. That's our African American community here. And we hold on to that very proudly. To us, there is no shame in that. So that church, which I am a member of, we infused in this museum, even to the videos that we have. They're videos with the historical Negro spiritual sung by our own choir. Our choir doesn't really do gospel; it does the Negro spiritual. That is historical.
Yes, ma'am, loving it.
We stand on that, and to come and listen to the very vibrant and lively stories of so many. We have a wall that shows 70 African American businesses that used to be in Cape May. Today there are only 3, and we tell the story of that. We have a room that just shows that vibrant community. What happened to them? We show the 60s. We show the segregated schools. We show the all-Black lifeguards on the Black beaches, and so we get a chance to tell about the beachfront, where there are still to today, there's not one hotel on Cape May's beachfront that's owned by an African American. But yet we tell the story of one Black man in Cape May with enough money to buy one. He went to the gentleman, offered him the money, and the gentleman said, "I wish I could. I know you have the money, but if I sell it to you, I'll never be able to live in Cape May. We tell that story. And to today, there still isn't. So there's a lot. There are great stories in this museum.
So one of the things that has been interesting for me, Professor Anderson Townsend, and maybe it's just me being a big theology buff, but one of the things that been a huge conversation is about whether or not the Black church has been relevant, in the 21st century struggle. And it's interesting because these sorts of narratives get left out as we are thinking about the role of spirituality and all of that, because I think that the church has done an amazing job of saving literal souls in a material, physical way, but has not done a great job of bragging about it. And I think that these kinds of
as a church trustee, Chris, which I am a church trustee and I'm a deacon, we had to reinvent ourselves. We had an aging congregation. This is not a town that has a lot of young people, so we had to rethink our position to say this museum will not only tell the story that we know of our community, and also the church and the importance of spirituality to us, but it also allows us to stay relevant in this community and stay a part of the community. The church made that conscious decision to do that.
I share. Don't get me to shout in here. Don't you start me now. I've been trying to be reasonable today. Don't do it. I'm not doing it today. Not today. Y'all not getting me today. Not today. You will not. I will not.
Professor, thank you for joining.
She's having her link is not.
Hello, Donna.
I'm Donna. I just joined. I just wanted to say I just had people.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, Donna.
Donna, your connection's going in and out, so we can't hear you right now.
Telling me to. Can you hear?
No.
No, Donna, we cannot. You keep going in and out.
Yeah, why don't you go out and come back on?
Yeah, go out and come back in.
And Professor Tanner, that's our
like if you leave the studio and come back in, your sound went come on through better.
Yeah, that's another one of our co-hosts, Donna K. Williams, former three-term councilman for Orange, New Jersey, and once upon a time an elected organizer, quite a sister that we love very much. She'll have some great questions for you when she rejoins us. Jonathan, you get ready to ask. Go ahead. I see your hand. I see you.
Okay, no. I was just talking to Donna, but Chris, if you have another question, you can ask it, or I will go into a different direction.
I have one of the things that's
I'm just wondering. You seem so connected right then. Like you had something on your face was like, I want to ask more questions.
You're not doing it to me today. Y'all are not doing it to me today. Okay, I'm not.
What? I mean, because I know that your connection to religion in this conversation was just was moving.
Today. see, Professor Anderson, see how they're trying to make me act. They're trying to make me act Southern now. See how they act. See how they do.
Well,
Well, I mean, given your voice and your Baltimore roots.
So Harriet Tubman is interesting to me because, number one, I grew up in the shadows of the Great Blacks and Wax Museum and all of that. And also, again, we call ourselves Tubman City. And so one of the things that I think is I'd like to know is when you talk about the relationship between that community and the church, what role did the church play in sustaining people in the face of that kind of overt racism where I have the money to afford something, but yet I can't purchase it, and there's something how proud are you given the church's role in sustaining people? Like, how proud are you of that legacy? Because I think that to me is something that should be talked about more.
I think what Macedonia Baptist Church has done is made all of Cape May rethink. Here's an aging African-American church with mostly senior members that kind of has taken a gem and capitalized on it but not just that particular piece with Harriet Tubman, but also it used the opportunity to talk about a community that pretty much Cape May wanted to forget about. And the church, it began with rumors connected to the church that they were going to demolish our parsonage. When that happened, all of the church ladies showed up at the city council meeting. All of the church ladies, including many of the other Cape May residents, but all the church ladies made their presence known that no, you will not demolish the parsonage and turn it into a parking lot. And so Cape May joined in and said, wow, absolutely not. We love Macedonia Baptist Church. And of course, from there, we had some private investors who came to our next trustee meeting at the church and said, we have an idea to turn the parsonage into the Harriet Tubman Museum. As African-American church members, we had to think hard because there are many stories of how our land has been taken away, our property has been taken away. So we made sure that we've never, ever released and sold this property. It still belongs to Macedonia Baptist Church. Even though it is the Harriet Tubman Museum of Cape May, it belongs to Macedonia Baptist Church.
Amen. Y'all not doing it to me today. Y'all not doing it to me.
So that's interesting, because that means that, to Chris's point, you're talking about the importance of your Black church, right?
Yeah.
In terms of understanding and recognizing its own history and its history of having land stolen from it.
See this?
And
this
being
is some liberation
proactive.
theology. This is some Black liberation theology for you right now. That this is what it is right here.
Yes, and you must also consider that the Harriet Tubman Museum has, and the church is right next door, has had the attention of the governor of New Jersey. It's been on NBC, ABC, so it's had major attention, including our church members. When Governor Murphy came to visit the Harriet Tubman Museum, our church sang behind him. He got to know some of our most lively, animated church mothers, and believe me, they took advantage of that opportunity. So we got the spotlight that churches in Cape May, much bigger than ours and much wealthier than ours, have never had that opportunity. But God blessed us, and I do believe He blessed us, and He gave us this chance to tell this precious story, and then segue it to the story of many, many wonderful African Americans that really made Cape May what it is today.
I think just then, when you were giving us that history, is the history of how it became a museum also documented?
Yes, that
like the story of.
Yes, we have a historian Yes, we have a historian for the Harriet Tubman Museum, but also the church has a history committee that also documents that as well. Yeah. So that stays between the two entities. There are two historians, and so that keeps makes sure that all our documentation stays in place and is in a place to be revisited. Yes.
But we have you on. If I was going to switch directions and ask some very specific Juneteenth questions, someone wants to ask more questions or clarification on stuff that we've already said, please do so now. If you have on religion or any of the things that you talked about with history.
One of the things I want to talk about is.
Come on, Chris.
I think one of the things that Mr. Alton can tell you is every year on every debate topic, I write a reparations ask, an affirmatives, constructive affirmative on reparations every year, no matter what the topic is. And so one of the things that I would love to know is, where does you and your church community and your church family and your community stand on? I think that right now, as of my research this morning, there seems to only be 2 properties for sale in Cape May.
Probably.
Which means that's some,
it's very,
Which means that is some very, very exclusive real estate.
Oh, very, 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 very. Listen, Chris, and this is kind of sort of a side story, but I want to share it with you. My family still owns a house in Cape May. Now, listen, most Black people that own houses in Cape May sold them at very low prices because that's all they would offer them, and then they'd add on maybe $100,000 worth of renovation and sell it for $500,000 above, which put it out of our price range. My house is still in our family. I know this sounds odd, only because my youngest brother's son plays for the Memphis Grizzlies, Kyle Anderson. He's a billionaire. So he was able to put the money, give it to his father to pay top dollar for our home, to keep it in our family. So I always say to every tour group that I go through, does it take being an NBA millionaire to have a house in Cape May? It shouldn't.
Yeah, so that was one of the things that has been that was one of the things that I have been thinking about, given what just went on in California with that Black community in California who was able to reclaim their land. I think that one of the things that I think is an important piece here, and I hope if not, I can pass on some of that research. I would be delighted to have any hand in this. This would make my life worth living. Is maybe I think there might be a restorative justice piece here to be investigated in terms of how people have had their land removed and their wealth removed, and
absolutely
somebody might owe some money here. And I think that given what you're saying, and given the sort of practices that went on in order to remove this community and these people from this land, I think that might be something that we need to be discussing, particularly since those very lively ladies have had a conversation with our good government. I think that might be. I mean, is that something that you all have explored, or is that something that you would be interested in?
Well, and here's where we've had some dialogue. The two investors who are behind this museum, one of them now is the mayor of Cape May, so hoorah. He was one of the major renovationists in this whole project, and now he is the mayor of Cape May. And his father, who is probably one of the top businessmen in Cape May. And yes, there are some conversations about spaces in Cape May that we are hoping that will be able to somehow be written in or put aside, or in some sort of reparative way, open it for families of color to return to Cape May. Our focus, our mission in the Harriet Tubman Museum, after you leave our last room, the legacy room, is to regenerate the interest in the families to return to Cape May, the businesses that at one time there were over 70 and now there are only 3, to return the business to Cape May. Quite frankly, I've been in Cape May all my life. This has probably been the most African Americans I've seen in Cape May in my entire life.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'm amazed. I'm amazed. And
the image in my mind. Yeah, the image in my mind is that if you're talking about a community with 70 Black businesses, you're talking about a community with that kind of abolition, that kind of history of abolitionism and all of that. If you're talking about all of that, then to me, just as we just commemorated what happened in Tulsa, the massacre and the pillaging that happened in Tulsa, as we look at the reclamation that happened to that Black beach community in California, to me, now I know that certain other people in Washington seem not to know this, but to me that seems to be an obvious very sign that there was certainly some institutional race that took place to remove those people.
Absolutely.
Right? I don't know about anybody else, but I love me some beach. So you think there's some Black folks that packed up and left the beach. That's too much for me to wrap my head around. I don't believe that for no 5 minutes. We did not pack up and just leave the beach. That does not, we don't do that. So I know that there's got to be, I'm thinking of Richard Rothstein's book, The Color of Law, thinking of all of that. I'm wondering, I know there has to be some investigation into what happened that caused that.
Absolutely. And actually, Chris, on our legacy timeline, there is a piece that we have, a reproduction of it, of a newspaper in Cape May that speaks from 1930. It talks about removal. It's called a wise suggestion. And the wise suggestion is to remove the African Americans from Lafayette Street to make it free from mixture with the white people. Upgrade the city's image. We have that document. We have that actual newspaper clipping reproduced on our timeline. It's called A Wise Suggestion. It began the urban renewal in Cape May and the buyout of many African Americans on that street, because it calls for the removal of them, chiefly from that street.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. But we have that article that clearly says it. We even have two residents who sued the city of Cape May when they tried to tear their house down. They offered them, they sued them and said, you can't do it. One of them went to President Lyndon Johnson, a lady named Amelia Hampton. She owned the Stephen Smith house. She wrote to Lyndon Johnson and said, the city of Cape May is tearing my house down. Can you help me? Lyndon Johnson, and we have this on the timeline, wrote a letter to the officials of Cape May to save her house. Her house is still standing today, but it is the historic Stephen Smith house. And that's, he's so that story is told in our museum.
There's a check that need to be wrote right now. Somebody and some people got to move. That's just it. Yeah, we're gonna have to. Yeah, we need to have him come. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Professor, I'm back, and I wanted to ask you, welcome again. But I thought Aquaba Sweets was in Cape May, and I thought that was a Black-owned. Is Aquaba Sweets still in Cape May?
Aquaba just sold hers last summer. She it's a very interesting thing because I mean, when you're in Cape May, you're African American, you do know everybody. I know that sounds ridiculous, but African American Cape May people, we speak to everybody African American because there's so few of us. We just go in the city and speak to everybody because that's how few there are. So we know you if you come into our town. That's, So we met her. She actually owned 2 businesses in Cape May, but neither one of them really became very successful. Cape May is very political. You really have to tend to them. You have to be hands-on. You really have to be a hard worker to make it work here in Cape May. You really do. And so, it's not really a place that you can drop a business and kind of sort of move on to your next business. It wouldn't work here. So, she did have a business here, but it kind of never caught on. It just kind of sort of, it just didn't, it seemed to not have maybe enough of the attention. So,
Donna, tell us who you were asking about. I don't think everybody recognizes the name you raised.
Aquaba Sweets. Mm-hmm. I know her as a bed and breakfast owner. She started her first bed and breakfast in Brooklyn, and she went on to own one in DC and then Cape May, and that's why I was familiar because I had stayed in her property in DC and was very pleased with it. But I can understand the hands-on and having to be hands-on and the community. Yeah,
I was anticipating staying in the Brooklyn property for a UN event that was sidelined by COVID that would have taken place in April of last year. So I never got to do my Aquaba stay in Brooklyn. Aquaba means welcome. Yes. Yeah, so it's a good share. Good share.
So Professor tells what I said before. I'm sorry, Jonathan. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. You had a question before.
No, I was just going to say that.
Is that the question you wanted to ask?
Yeah, it was. I was just saying that people were stating that. I know I have my brother's good friend, Walter Fields. He's down in Cape May every year.
Really?
I know, Walter Fields comes to Cape May every year. Probably not last year, but every year. And I know we used to go to Martha's Vineyard. And would you say that you're a similar community in any way? The Martha's Vineyard to Cape May.
I've never been to Martha's.
Okay, so
I've never been to Martha's, so I don't have any point of reference there. So, I mean, want to go?
Ahead.
I mean, here's the thing: if you're a Cape May person, there are a lot of places that we know that are similar, but when we look at them, we kind of compare them and say, well, Cape May's like that. Like, so why go? I mean, if I go somewhere, I generally go someplace that's not like Cape May, but I certainly have an interest in seeing Martha's Vineyard. I've heard a lot about it, and our community, I don't think is quite as wealthy. I mean, we're working folks, and Like I said, most Cape May people, I did a tour group today. I said most Cape May people have a couple side hustles. Like we hustle, we're hard workers. We might do this, but we might do 4 or 5 things on the side. I am a superintendent. I was a principal, but I always had a cleaning business in the summertime. So I always told my teachers, get all that business straightened out by July 1st, because my real job starts then, in case you fire me. I always got a real job to fall back on, so I can always clean, so that's who Cape May is. That's who we are.
You've suggested before. Oh, my apology. You suggested before that having that business, having that if they fire me, that is a cultural thing. That is something that was passed down. Could you elaborate on that?
Yes. Well, my grandmother, was a domestic worker. So I started, all the kids here in Cape May, we were working at 11. We started with cleaning. We started with every person in Cape May. If you live in Cape May, you have a summer job. Because we're a resort area. So you can wash dishes. You can clean houses. You can, that's our culture. We go with our grandparents to work. We know how to earn. We know how to, we know how to do. But now they're businesses. Now, if you were, you work with your parents in cooking, you're doing a side business doing the cooking. If you worked in cleaning, you started as a housekeeper, you moved into chambermaid, then you opened up your own cleaning business, and you just, you do a lot of the houses. The same job that really my grandmother had. Even though I am an educator, yes, I am a teacher, yes, I have been a vice principal, a principal, a superintendent. I've been all those things. Yes, I'm in their educational community. There's no doubt about it. And their first African-American superintendent. But I also have a cleaning business. And that's the historical root part of me that tells me that if they took every single thing away from me, my grandma gave me the job to say, no, you won't be fired from that because you own it. I think that's what Harriet did.
I think that one of the things, right, like one of the things that I just want to throw out there is like it is Juneteenth. We have not talked about your opinion on that. As a holiday, as a federal holiday, as a date, right? Historically, what does that date mean to you? The work you do, the Harriet Tubman Museum. How does Juneteenth interact with what we've been talking about?
Well, our museum did its first soft opening on Juneteenth, and it's very I find it I found out very late in my adult life about Juneteenth. It's not in the history books, and I didn't learn about it until
Professor Anderson, you mean to tell me that some history got left out the history book about black people?
Time.
You don't say.
We're repeating it over and over and over again.
Now, Professor.
Yeah.
Professor, you wouldn't be telling me that people hid emancipatory history from you, and you wouldn't say no.
Yeah. Yes, and I still think today they're trying to close their eyes because for Cape May, all white community to have a
Professor, how could you say this to me?
Yes,
I'm so heartbroken.
And
you mean to tell me that as a black woman and an educator, you think that they would actually hide things out of a textbook? No.
Well, she is trying to tell you that, Chris, if you let her finish.
Well, I want to say this, though. In Cape May, which is a highly tourist, dominated town, just for us to have a Juneteenth celebration, which our museum will have tomorrow, to open formally the Harriet Tubman Museum, is major. That in itself is a great jump. Our executive director, who is white, chose Juneteenth. Now I was kind of tickled by that because I really didn't know she knew what Juneteenth was, so I kind of had a little faith in her then. But every year, we've kind of taken that opportunity to educate again, because every year we have new groups of mostly white audiences. So we always have to put in Juneteenth the true history of Juneteenth. And let me just say this, regardless of whether we believe in it, and we know that it is to be true, we still have people out there who question that. they as we know, just in our past year or two, that you can even write it in a book and they still will dispute it. They still will dispute it. And
Yeah,
so
all the way down to our vice president, all the way down to the vice president of the United States.
All the way to the vice
My
president.
body.
Yes. Even with Harry Tubman, there's a part of the museum that, when you tour with me, I call it the haters corner, because when we started getting so much attention, of course, they came out, and said, well, was Harriet Tubman really here? How long was she in Cape May? How can you prove it? Well, what did she do for Cape May? So we have a corner that documents that she was here in about 8 different primary sources. But I said to the trustees, I'm tired of proving. I really don't feel like I have to prove anything. I've proven to you all my life. So I always, when I tour, I'll say, well, this is the haters corner for all the haters out there, because they came out once we started gaining so much attention. And the same thing for Juneteenth. As we look at Juneteenth and we share this part of history, a whole portion of our nation that just stayed enslaved so much longer, there still will be people who do not believe it and do not think it is worthy of a federal holiday. And that's the work we still have to do. And that's the work we still have to do. And I look at Juneteenth as another opportunity to once again do what our history books will not do. The history books still don't have Juneteenth in it. If they are, I don't know where they are. I've still yet to see a history book with Juneteenth, but I haven't been in the high school file.
As an educator.
Yeah, when's it going to be in there? When's any of this going to be in there? I don't know.
So I'm to that point as an educator, right? All your professional life in a historic community with an historic Black history, right? How do you see the future of how our history is taught? I mean, we're in a state that has an Amistad Commission, right? That's where history is supposed to be taught. We all have a very good relationship with the executive director, really sharp sister who I personally love the hell out of, this great Stephanie James Harris. Well, what should be our next steps on that frontier, standing on the shoulders of what you're doing with the Harriet Tubman Museum?
I really think that begins with the commissioner. It begins with really strong work on providing funding for all districts, and then the mandate that all school districts include, not just with the Amistad, but also African American history, even if they do it virtually, if they do it through curriculum, but they must document that they are teaching it. Listen, in Cape May, our school district doesn't even have one African American teacher. And guess what? There are enough of them here that they'll tell you, and we don't have to. I've heard their superintendents say, listen, our teachers look like what the business people of Cape May want to see. Well, it does, because all the business people of Cape May are white. So if I don't have one African-American teacher in the whole school district, that's 4 schools. How likely is it that African-American literature, history will be taught? So the commissioners, and I mean, I've worked as a school superintendent, so I've met many, at least 3 of our commissioners, as I've worked with some of the, and I had one of the really challenging school districts, so I had to pull them up. But there's work to be done there. There's the Amistad Commission, but when you come down to Cape May, they totally ignore it. They don't have to. And no one's checking it, and no one is really following up. There's a lot of work to be done. I wish, I wish I had the ear to say, it's nice you have it, but you go down and check some of the school districts that are further down. They're not even paying attention. They thumb their nose at all that. And they have. And they can.
No. Racism?
They thumb their nose. There's not one. Yeah. So,
Professor, you're breaking my heart.
No.
You mean to tell me there's actual racism in America?
Oh, yeah. It's just,
I didn't know. So many people. I didn't know. I was listening to speeches from the White House and everything. I just thought it all went away. I thought I didn't know. I was lacing up my
so just as a shortcut, As a shortcut for Randall's humor, he is always saying that, reminding everyone that both Tim Scott and Kamala Harris said that that the United States is not a racist country. So it's kind of a theme that he says. So he's always going to be referring back to not just the Trump White House, but the Biden White House of the one that signed the reparations bill as well. I'm not reparations bill. Oops, the Juneteenth bill.
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah. Yeah, we always listen. We always laugh, and we have our own side jokes here. And they say, "Well, 40 acres and mule." I really don't need a mule. I'm not really crazy about horses, but I'd like one of those nice little beach houses on the beachfront.
I tell you that. I know that's right. I know that's right.
Listen.
So we have a lot of
Professor,
work.
I don't mean it. And what do you think would be the reaction of the community if you said that there needed to be a discussion about property ownership, all of that? Do you think you would have to deal with a huge backlash?
They wouldn't. It wouldn't. Well, first of all, they would not. They would listen politely and give it absolutely no real thought, because it's big dollars, huge dollars. Now, again, there might be some movement here with our new mayor if he stays in long enough and can actually, but it would be very, very challenging, because the property here is so very valuable, and you're talking about ocean, still an island. But I'm not going to say it's impossible. Anything's possible. But right now, it's not what they say. It's what they do behind your presence. It's never what they say. They won't. They'll say whatever they say. It's what they do when you move away from what they said. I mean, I always say that they listen. We wear the mask because we're used to reading them, but they wear them too. They'll say one thing and do another behind the scene, and that's what this, I mean, all in this area. This is mostly a Republican-dominated county, so.
No.
Oh yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
Well, we are coming to the end of this particular segment, and we want to thank you so much for being here, for coming out, and we have to have you back on to talk about the museum, to talk about Cape May, and even to talk about the concept of reparations that we're going to get into actually in our next segment with Ryan Haygood and Larry Hamm. Because what you said and all the stuff you said just needs to be visited. There's one last question, though, we do have to ask you, and that we ask of all of our guests. Donna or Chris or Zaid, do you want to ask that question?
Hold on, I got this one. I know that you graduated from the historically black college, the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. Is that correct?
Yeah.
See, I do my research. I do my research.
Yes.
As a Marylander by education and osmosis, I want to know, first of all, would you kindly accept my friend request on Facebook that I just sent you? Shameless plug. Second,
Yes.
do you have a favorite hip hop artist?
My kids should help me with this.
I got one.
This is a hip hop talk show. I didn't give you that detail. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I should have asked them. Yeah.
That's right. I got one for you. There's a song by a group from Baltimore called Precise Science, and they have a song called it's a group called Precise Science, and they have a song called Tubman City. I will make sure that you get it. The second that you accept my friend request, I'll put the song in your inbox, and I will get you in contact with the artist who made the song. Okay. And it's all about Harriet Tubman. I think it would be really appropriate for it probably to be played in the museum, given what is the message is. And I will make sure that you get in touch with the brothers who made the song. But that should be. I got you. Because we from Maryland. With these Yankees, they can't really, they
Love
struggle.
the HBCs. Love the HBCs. Listen, I have a master's on, at Rowan and a couple. But listen, I still think the best of my education came from the HBC. It taught me about life. I'm at the HBC. I met Nikki Giovanni. I met all of the authors that I actually taught in the white school district. No, I didn't have to read them and just read them to the kids. I met them, and that's because I went to a HBC. So I highly support them.
Come on, that's it. We here.
So thank you. And thank you so much, and Chris, thank you for that connection for as well. It's like all politics are local, especially it's networking. It's great.
It was a real pleasure to have you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I hope to
Professor.
see you in Cape May, all of you. If you can, just
Soon
pop
come.
in and
Soon
give me a
come.
tour. Yes. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Take care. All
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
And my sister, I believe, loves the museum. So thank you.
Okay.
And my sister, shameless plug for. Yes, thank
Plug
you.
it.
Yes, that is a shameless plug for my sister, who is who wrote a book on Harriet Tubman, and the
title is Harriet Tubman.
and I'm always yes, it's Harriet Tubman for Beginners, written by Annette Alston. I'm sorry, you can help plug my sister's book too.
I got you. It's called Harriet.
What was that, Chris Randall?
Written by Annette Alston. And now I look down at the bottom of the screen, and here is the Grim Reaper. Oh Lord.
We are getting ready to go to the second part of our show, and this is great because it follows greatly on the first part of our show. When we're talking about the Harriet Tubman Museum, we're talking about some very specific things in Cape May, like Black people not being allowed to buy beachfront property, along many other things that she talked about. That went into the normal cost of laws in the United States. So welcome, Ryan Haygood. We had Larry Hamm on, who's going to be coming as well.
Awesome.
Brian, did you know
We're going to
that?
have this next section.
Ryan, did you know that about Cape May?
Did what?
I read that recently.
Yeah, I was asking Ryan if he knew everything some of the things she was talking about.
Yeah, powerful.
Okay.
It's good to see you.
Oh, right, because one of the things, just in terms of the introduction, is that like Ryan Haygood is the director of the Institute for Social Justice in New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, and he has been talking about reparations, not just nationally, but reparations in New Jersey. He has some sobering statistics that Chris Randall talks about all the time about scaring him when he talks about the net worth of individual Black people is $175. Chris Randall started to cry. He felt bad.
Chris called me the Grim Reaper.
Grim Reaper, yes.
Yes, the Grim Reaper.
Let me explain why. Let me explain
your
why.
statistics. So.
It is grim.
Let me defend myself for one moment, Mr. Haygood. When I say you the Grim Reaper, okay, what I mean by that is I can be having a wonderful day. Yeah. I mean, birds can be chirping, racism can be happening, and then all of a sudden I pick up this magical thing like an article, right? And it might have your name on it. And what you might end up saying is something like that a Black life is literally worth less than a pair of new Jordans.
Yeah.
And I have to wrap my head around that we spend 700 times more in incarcerating a single child.
Yeah.
And that is when I say the Grim Reaper, I mean the sobering reality of what you say.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. And also usually I teach it in Colorado College at the Global Debate Symposium with your former the now president of Colorado College, Dr. Mike Edmonds. And so one of the things is kind of like this weird connection between the two of us. And when I hear your name, I just know that I'm getting ready to hear something that's going to totally ruin my day as a Black man. And that's why I call you the Grim Reaper. It's only because of the seriousness of your research, and it's all out of love.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I receive it because the numbers, they're startling, right? And I think for me, what pains me most, I think what grieves my heart the most is that you lay out those numbers as you do with Dean Edmonds, as we do on this show, as we do in life. And then you say, all right, so if it's true, and it is, that in New Jersey, the individual net wealth for Black people is, to your point, Chris, $179 less than a pair of Jordans, less than a laptop, less than an iPhone. If that's true, what do you do about that? And then we say, well, at a minimum, we should create, Brother Zaid, a reparations task force to understand where that comes from. And then we need to come up with some policy recommendations and investments to repair that harm. And then folks say back to us, we can't do that. And I know, right? I know that if those numbers, if you attach those numbers to white folks, we'd be having all kinds of states of emergency about how we need to respond to those numbers. But because it's Black folks that confront those numbers, there's a tolerance to that, right? There's a tolerance. There's an acceptance. Like, you know, like Mos Def talks about how like the length of Black life is treated with short worth, right? There's this sense that
it's always all right for our behinds to be poor.
Say it again.
It was always all right for our behinds to be poor, right? That's why our kids are screaming Black Lives Matter, because they ain't never mattered.
Right.
But as you heard, go on, I'm sorry.
But no, I mean, and that's it. You know, I mean, I'll share this with you. So to Jonathan's point, you know, we've been with you all as partners pushing for New Jersey to create a reparations task force to deal with the numbers that Chris talked about. And I'll share this very candidly with you. We had a conversation so as you all know, the way things move in the legislature is on the Senate side, Senate President Steve Sweeney has to move legislation. If he doesn't, it doesn't move. And on the Assembly side, it's Craig Coughlin. If he doesn't move it, it doesn't move. It goes nowhere, right?
We paid him a visit on Monday.
Around police accountability. Yes, So in a meeting with Speaker Craig Coughlin, we were pushing for this New Jersey Reparations Task Force bill. And he said back to us, well, why do you have to include the word reparations in it? Why can't you call it an economic justice task force or some version of that, a racial disparities task force? Why do you need the word reparations in it? And we said back to him, listen, the fact that we're asking for a task force is itself the concession. In light of the numbers we face, the structural racism we face, a task force is a very light lift. And so we're going to be clear about what we're asking for. So we created this campaign, which will launch tomorrow, and it says this: say the word.
Now let me do a Chris Randall. And these two people you talk about, Democrats, this Sweeney and this here Coughlin people.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Them is Democrats, Chris.
No.
Can you believe that? Can you believe that?
No.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about them, so right, more on this. Like, are everybody saying no to you?
Well, so it's interesting.
Like,
This legislation that will create this reparations task force was introduced in 19. So, right, because we wanted to get it in that 400th anniversary year of 1619. Then it was reintroduced this year, 2021. And every Black elected official in New Jersey has signed on to the bill, right? And what's fascinating to Zaid's point is, you know, New Jersey is one of the most racially diverse states in the country, as you all know, but it's largely controlled by three white men who happen to be Irish: Steve Sweeney, Craig Coughlin, and Phil Murphy.
And they don't even get along.
Right. Well, so it's fascinating because we're talking about sort of this racial reckoning and how we can make this moment different, but it requires us to rely on very traditional means. Right. And so what's fascinating for me is, right, this is Juneteenth, and you see we have all kinds of, tomorrow's Juneteenth, all kinds of reactions to Juneteenth. And it's fascinating for me to watch people, white folks, elected officials in this state, to talk about Juneteenth without talking about slavery and this reparations task force bill. Like, in my mind, they follow very naturally. Right. Otherwise, what are we doing around Juneteenth?
That's at the heart of that man's question to you. Why do you have to call it reparations? Because reparations means that something happened that needs to be fixed, and they do not want to have the discussion about what they did.
Listen. I'm not gonna sit here and allow y'all to slander this good Democratic Party, and I know y'all not gonna talk bad about my good vice president, because there is no racism in America. I don't know what you all are talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know what's wrong with y'all. You always complaining, running around, rebel rousing. I don't understand. I really don't.
Yeah.
I really don't. And I can't accept this kind of slander. Where are my Chuck Taylors?
We want to try to I was going to try to bring Larry Hamm into the conversation because just to see what he thinks about this.
And as Chairman comes into the conversation, I just want Ryan and Chairman, that question, is that a unique question? Can we put legislation forward like in this with younger? I don't know. Is this? But those men are not young, so I'm gonna take that back. So with that, was this if you look at the federal level, there was Reparation Task Force passed and other places. Did you find that this was a unique question asked in New Jersey, or other people have asked that question as well?
Well, yeah, Councilwoman, I love that question because, I mean, as it turns out, so just for perspective, right, as you all know, a task force is usually what politicians create when they don't want to do something, right? Task forces usually, right, unfortunately, too often they meet for a period of time, they write a report, then they put the report on the shelf somewhere and they call it good.
And hope you go away.
And hope no one ever reads it. But if someone does, then they can say, oh yeah, we did that thing. But here's the thing. No state in the country before last year had ever passed a reparations task force. Right. We got legislation introduced in 19, and then in 2020, California, inspired by our legislation, introduced it and passed it. Governor signed it. So California became the first state in the country to create a reparations task force, and their task force has already met at least one time. So there's only been one state in the country to ever do it, and California is the state. And then federally, HR 40, after sitting dormant for about 35 years after the late Congressman John Conyers introduced it, it had a hearing in 19, and then there has been some movement on the House side in the last couple of weeks. But what's fascinating to your question, Councilwoman, is we have been unwilling even to say the word reparations. And the question is, what are we afraid? What are we afraid of? And so that's why I do have concerns about Juneteenth as a holiday, because too often Black people, we get ceremony. Other folks get substance.
That's right.
They get systems, they get protections, they get investments, they get empowered, and we get Facebook selfies with elected officials, dinners around election time, and ceremony. And the challenge with ceremony is that if you celebrate too soon, as with Juneteenth, you miss things. Like, for example, that historically, and Chairman Hamm talks about this powerfully, historically, New Jersey was a state rejected the Emancipation Proclamation.
Come on.
The thing that Juneteenth is based on. And so here we have Juneteenth as a state holiday in a state that historically rejected the Emancipation Proclamation. But if you don't know that history, then you celebrate too soon. And then we don't get at the thing that Juneteenth represents, which is the fight for freedom, which continues right now, which is why there needs to be repair for the enduring harm from slavery, which took root very deeply here. But what folks will say to you all, what they said to me is, but we can call it something else. Economic justice, Black Lives Matter. We can even do that now. Racial disparities, but we don't want to call it reparations, because if we call it reparations, we have to admit something is broken, and someone has to take responsibility for that. And we haven't gotten to that space yet. And part of what I think is important about this moment is, with enough pressure from us and other colleagues and allies, we can make these elected officials do it, as we have in every other area where we've pushed for things.
Chairman Hamm, and welcome.
While he's collecting his
To comment on Donna's question and what was said, Chairman Hamm, can you hear me?
I don't think he can hear you.
I don't think you can hear me.
I can't understand.
Or actually,
I can't understand Jonathan.
Can't hear you.
I can understand everybody else, but for some reason, I'm not getting Jonathan's reception here. It's coming through broken.
Chairman, can you understand me?
Yes, I can understand you perfectly.
And so what I had asked Ryan and you, and I said, welcome to you. And I asked Ryan and you, have there been any other levels of government, whether it's at the local level, the state level, or the federal level, that have ever asked that question, do we need to use the word reparation? Ryan answered it. And did we want to know, did you have anything to add to it?
So the question is, has anybody used the word reparations?
Or asked not to use the word reparations? So
yes, it happened.
Okay.
It happened in 2002 when Craig Stanley introduced a reparations bill. The A711 S322 is the second attempt at trying to establish a reparations commission in New Jersey. Craig Stanley attempted to establish a commission in the very beginning of the 21st century. I think it was around 2002, maybe 2003, but not further in than 2003. It was introduced as a reparations bill, but it quickly became a reconciliation. So what they did, I don't know, I'm sure some of you remember, back during the anti-apartheid struggle, after the overthrow of the racist apartheid regime and the release of Nelson Mandela and Mandela becoming the first president, they embarked upon what Bishop Tutu called a reconciliation effort. And they established these reconciliation commissions. And it was quite controversial in South Africa and in here, because reconciliation involved absolution of people that committed some terrible crimes under apartheid, including the assassination of Stephen Biko. But with these reconciliation commissions, if the murderers came forward and confessed to their crimes, they would not be prosecuted. Just the other day was the anniversary of the Soweto uprising. And from Soweto forward, there was great upheaval. It was really the second revolution after, well, I wouldn't call it revolution, second rebellion after Sharpeville back in the, I believe Sharpeville was in the early 1960s.
1960.
That's right. And many anti-apartheid activists were killed. But in an attempt to unify the country, which was probably could have been on the verge of civil war, because, people wanted the complete overthrow of apartheid and they wanted the punishment of all the evildoers, they installed these reconciliation commissions. So people here, I'm not talking about our people, I'm talking about the opposition, took a leaf from the South African notebook. And this is really the origins of all this reconciliation stuff that's going on, because it's not just with reparation. Anytime people start having sharp conversations and making demands about racial justice in this country, people start talking about reconciliation. We must reconcile. Remember, even those of you who are Christians, you read that Old Testament, that there cannot be peace without justice. That's what the Old Testament said. That's what the Bible said. Mm-hmm. Peace without the presence of justice is invalid. So to answer your question directly, there was a first attempt. Craig introduced a reparations bill, and it was quickly renamed reconciliation. And we struggled with this thing, intensely. And we tried to support it because the fundamental content and purpose of the bill stayed the same, to examine slavery, its impact, and to make recommendations for solutions and restitution and compensation without calling it reparations. But in the end, even that wasn't enough. The bill actually was passed out of committee. There were some amendments, but we thought we could still live with it. And we were all told to come down to the assembly on a certain day when they were in session to witness the passage of this historic bill. And the speaker at that time, who I cannot remember who it was, never brought the bill to a vote. So I don't think that we should compromise on this matter. It should be a reparations commission. And when we say reparations, we mean reparations for enslavement, restitution for the 2.5 centuries of enslavement here in North America, here in the United States. Slavery, of course, has a history of about 500 years in the Western Hemisphere, but specific to what we call the United States today is about 250 years of chattel slavery. And economists have estimated that the cost of the amount of theft of that labor could be anywhere from $6 trillion to $14 trillion. And every state, every county, every municipality that has laws on its books that sanction slavery is in fact liable. Slavery was not a private practice. It was the law of the land. It was the law of the town, the county, the state, and the nation. And they all are liable. That's why they're trying so hard not to have a discussion about reparations.
Exactly.
Because they know the cost will be immense. But they can afford it. Look, these billionaires just in the last year made $1 trillion and are hiding it away in some offshore account. You know, okay, we be easy on America. Give us $1 trillion a year every year for the next 6 years or the next 14 years. And I say this, there are a lot of people that are talking about stuff in reparations, which is not what we're talking about. We're talking about reparations for slavery. People talking about a housing program as reparations. They're talking about an education program as reparations. Those are all good gestures toward correcting inequities. But what we're talking about is reparations for stolen labor, restitution, compensation for the 250 years that our ancestors were forced to labor and make this country the richest country in the world. In 1860, the largest form of capital in the United States, greater than banking and industrial capital combined, was the investment in the institution of slavery. That was the #1 industry in the United States. That is the industry on which the wealth of this nation was built. And we received not 1 penny of compensation. And that's what we're saying, it's time. You know, and that's why we have to support this. We have to take a strong stand on this issue, you know, and get these bills passed. It's A711 in the Assembly, S322 in the Senate, and we're also fighting for the passage of HR 40, which is HR 40 in the House of Representatives, and it's S40 in the U.S. Senate. And U.S. Senator Cory Booker is the sponsor of S40, which is a mirror image of the HR 40 bill that's been reintroduced in Congress since 1989.
Yeah.
I'll stop at this point. I can keep going, but I'll stop because I don't want to.
Chairman Hamm,
Yes.
I've met you one time. I met you at a protest with Baba Zaid. I'm not going to tell the story no more. I'm just going to say that he doesn't really pass out messages very well. That the police work for y'all sometimes. Anyway, I let him tell you that in private time about how that almost went very bad. Anyway, I need a little bit of chastisement because I'm a little frustrated. Okay. So I need you to do what good elders do in the African tradition. So first of all, do I have permission to speak?
Sure.
Go ahead. Yes, brother.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Because
I am officially a senior citizen. I'm 67 years old, and I'll
I
collect the Social
just don't want
Security.
any trouble because I know I just don't want no trouble. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you is one of the things that I'm frustrated about, and it seems to get me in trouble all the time, is I am growing as a millennial. I'm growing more and more irritated with the way that people compromise and are excited about things that I don't think we should be, and what we think is a victory. For example, Rutgers University, which is profiled in both the book Ebony and Ivy, which is about the history of enslavement, its connection to higher education, and a book called Scarlet and Black, talks all about its history. Sojourner Truth was owned by the first president of Rutgers.
That's right.
A man named Jacob Hardenberg. And to commemorate that, what happened is the Rutgers New Brunswick campus has a thing called the Sojourner Truth Apartments.
Indeed.
Now, Ryan, I can't make this up. Ryan. I'm trying to be like you. I'm trying to be the Slim Reaper. You understand? I am saying, what do we do? How do you handle? Because when I think about where we are in terms of pushing reparations, all of those things, the thing that irritates me the most is there are people who look like us who preach a particular kind of narrative that holds the real progressive movements and struggles back. You got the brother right now that's trying to join the CBC, but has voted not to register elections and preaches voter suppression and all of that. You got the vice president of the United States saying she don't know if it's racist or not, and all these things, and everybody seems to be so excited when we get these token things. Am I wrong for that? Like that I feel more betrayed. I feel more betrayed by older Black elected officials and representatives than I do Donald Trump. Am I wrong for that? Because
Well,
both of these two
you have a right to feel. You have a right to feel any way you feel, brother. You have that right. You know, I feel some kind of way too. You know about it.
I'm asking just my emotion. When I say things like these two parties seem to be exactly alike, and it seems that what we call in quote unquote progressive is really just a buffer class between the disaster that is the masses of Black people, as Ryan outlined pretty amazingly when Mr. Haygood talks about the wealth of Black people versus the larger questions. Is that correct, or do you think I'm just out of bounds? Help me out.
No, I don't think you're out of bounds. I think
no.
I think that
you don't.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
That's interesting because I thought I would put your reputation as an activist up against a lot of people, and certain people told me that the activists on the street wouldn't support that. So it's cool. But go ahead. What were you saying, Chairman?
No, I think
because you weren't really to the point.
No,
Reverend. Chairman Hamm, what he's asking you directly is there any difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and should we just say no to the Democratic Party at all? Like, there's no difference between the two. That's the question he's asking.
They are both capitalist parties. They are both corporate parties. They're both parties in which the corporations and the ruling class of this country have disproportionate input. They are both parties that have a history of racism, and they are both parties that have at different times acted adversely toward Black people. But they are not the same. And we have to be very precise, particularly in these very chaotic times. If we were to walk out to the parking lot, right? And I said to you, there are cars in the parking lot, everybody would agree. But if I say to you, all the cars are the same, you could say, well, yes, they all have combustion engines, or you might say they all have combustion engines. They all have four wheels. They all run on gasoline. But upon precise examination, you might find that some of those cars don't have a combustion engine. They have an electric engine, that most of them might be automatic, but some of them are standard, that some of them may have V8 engines instead of V6 engines, and on and on and on. So on the one hand, the two ruling parties in this country are very similar and act in a similar way. But when you look at different periods, they did have different policies. So in one sense, we're in a structural prison politically, because in our country, this capitalist country does not have the kind of political system that all the other capitalist countries have. All the other capitalist countries have what are called parliamentary systems, in which you have multi-party democracies. You can have in some of these countries 10, 15 parties, you know, and in most of the other countries, if a party gets 5% of the vote, they get at least one representative in the parliament. In this country, we have, unfortunately, a two-party system, which in fact gives nominal approval to third parties, but in reality, it sets standards and policies so stringent that it makes it impossible for it makes it nearly impossible for third parties to in fact come to power. You know, when you look at the last few elections, if you take the votes of all the third party candidates together and you add them up, it's less than 2% of the total vote cast. And that's historically been the situation since the end of World War II in the United States. And so we're forced in a kind of way, you know, to either deal with a third party whose candidate actually can't win in most circumstances. There are situations here and there. I mean, you look at Bernie Sanders, right? But Bernie Sanders wasn't really a third party candidate. He was an individual who ran against Republicans and Democrats and managed to beat them both in the general election. So there are exceptions to every rule. So, you know, how do we look at Joe Biden? I mean, Biden is forced to do some things nominally because the Democrats wouldn't have won anything had it not been for the black vote and the Latino vote and other, you know, black and brown voting groups in this country. So they know that they have to do some nominal things. But I think those people who are saying that, you know, the what do we call it now? The holiday that we had, the Juneteenth holiday, you know, they would like to use it, you know, mostly as a symbolic and ceremonious, you know, type of thing. But what we have to do is make it an instrument of struggle. You know, I can remember the same arguments. See, this is what happens when you're around a long time. The same arguments and the same things people are saying about Juneteenth, they were saying about the Martin Luther King holiday. But I was so glad when they passed the Martin Luther King holiday. You know why? Because I said, I'm going to choke them to death on Martin Luther King. The worst thing that the ruling class could have done was gave Dr. King a holiday, because that gave him a certain amount of legitimacy. And that enabled us to take his very radical views and propagate them among the people. I mean, it was Martin Luther King who said, you know, that we have to have a radical redistribution of power and wealth in America. We have to have a radical transformation. This is a quote. We have to have a radical transformation of our socioeconomic system, and on and on and on. I love the King holiday because I choke them to death every year, January 15th. The most radical stuff King said, that's the opportunity. So we have to do the same thing. You know, with Juneteenth, we have to make it a weapon of struggle. We have to talk about enslavement and its impact and the concomitant inequality that has resulted as a result of slavery. Every time we have Juneteenth, we should be marching and demanding reparations. Every dime and penny that they owe us, whether you think we can get it or not, you should raise it because it's owed to us. People walking around here talking about the white man don't owe me anything. He owes you everything. This whole country was built on our backs, on our whipped and beaten and battered and bruised and enslaved and chained and murdered and tortured bats. I'm sorry.
So should I actually should I vote for candidates who say things like America ain't racist?
No, she was wrong to say that. And you should say she was wrong to say that. Yeah. And she's saying it because that's what, the administration wanted her to say. Yeah. No, she should have been criticized for saying that. I know I've been on other shows and I criticized her for saying that. But see, our people, sometimes we beaten down so low that just to get one step up, we happy. Yeah. It's like we so far down in the well that if we could just get halfway up, we happy. Yeah. It's just like with Barack Obama. Obama did a lot of messed up stuff. He did some good things too. The good things we should say were good, but the bad things we should say were bad. Here he is, the son of an African from Kenya, next door neighbor to Libya, and he overthrew the Libyan government. The country that had the highest standard of living in Africa.
Oh yeah, that's right. Africa's most generous nation.
Water hold up for these armed groups. They can't even tell which group controls the government now in Libya. So if they do something positive, tell the truth. If they do something negative, tell the truth. Yeah. But you have to be strong, because if you're not strong, you're going to get beat down by your own people. Every time I go somewhere and I criticize,
I want to bring,
man, people want to whip me to death.
I want to bring Ryan back in to the conversation, and especially because you're talking about passing specific bills that Democrats won't pass. To Chris Randall's question, there's a Democratic primary happen. There's an election coming up for Democrats.
Let me interrupt you. Let me interrupt you one second. See, this is why I say we have to be precise in our language. We say the Democrats won't pass it. In one sense, that's true, but it's really a split in the Democratic Party, because there are some Democrats who will support it. Right. It's a whole bunch of Democrats that are co-sponsors of the bill. Right. And if you don't use precise language, you end up boxing yourself in strategically. Yeah. It's just like if I say the Democrats ain't doing nothing in the Senate. Well, the Democrats can't do nothing in the Senate because there's two Democrats, Manchin and Sinema, that vote with the Republicans and prevent the Democrats from having a majority to get anything passed. Yeah. So you got to be precise in your language so you can hit the target.
I mean, so that to that point, which I think is spot on, Jonathan, I think the Reparations Task Force bill, as we discussed, has the support of every Black elected official in the state. And the reality, just because of the way, to Chris's point, the way that race functions, if you added the support of every Black person in New Jersey to the support of every Black elected in New Jersey, it wouldn't be enough to move that Reparations Task Force bill, right? And so really what the Reparations Task Force bill needs to move, frankly, is some support from white allies. And this has been an interesting 15 months, right? As we've been in the coronavirus pandemic, this discussion around what does allyship look like? What does it do concretely? And how is it activated to do things like move this legislation? And so I do think that part of what Chairman Hamm articulates is you do have, at least with respect to Black elected officials, near unanimous support for the bill. The challenge is how do you activate, and this is where I think the Democratic Party is interesting, because they would say that philosophically, a good number of the white Democrats, even Governor Murphy, says he supports this bill in concept, right? Then the question is, so how do you get the idea of that support in concept concretized in a way that moves the bill? And then on the legislative side, Senator Sweeney and Speaker Coughlin, how do we apply pressure such that they move the bill? So what's fascinating to me is that Speaker Coughlin's district includes Perth Amboy, which everyone on this line knows was a major port for bringing in enslaved Black folks into the state where we were owned and exploited as property. And the irony that he would be hesitant to move a bill that deals with repairing the harm that emanated from his district is not lost on me. So part of our strategy, to the chairman's point, is how do we activate, yes, all the support we have from Black folks for the bill, but also how do we reach out to some of these supportive non-Black, specifically white allies to make that progress. And then, Chris, I just want to say really quickly on your point about the different parties, I've thought a lot about how, as someone who works at a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, that whoever is in office has to get the business from people. That is to say that if they do well, whatever their party, we stand with them and support them. And when they need to be challenged, we're comfortable doing that. And very often, I think, particularly in New Jersey, we have a discomfort around challenging our elected officials if they happen to be Democratic. You know, at the beginning of Governor Murphy's administration, you'll remember we had a show that Jonathan and Zaid hosted around Governor Murphy, and we had been working together at that time.
That's right.
The way to build accountability, and then we called it the movement for the 94%.
That's right.
And we talked about how when Governor Murphy ran the first time, he received 94% of the Black vote, but he only got 47% of the white vote. And so what we talked about then was, without the near unanimous support of Black voters, it's very likely that Governor Murphy doesn't become the governor. So the question is, given that Black voters helped to put Governor Murphy in office, what specific agenda does he have to empower Black people in this state where we confront some of the worst racial disparities in every direction in the country? And you'll remember at the beginning of Governor Murphy's tenure, he talked about commissioning a racial disparity study. Now he's at the end of his first term, and though he's done some good things, we're still with him on a number of things: independent prosecutor bill, $15 minimum wage, a number of Democratic reforms. That racial disparity study never materialized, and the racial wealth gap has worsened in this state under his leadership. And Chris, to your earlier point, we are now spending as a state almost $500,000 to incarcerate each kid in prison. And those, to be very clear, are mostly Black kids and to a lesser extent Latino kids, and almost to a zero extent white kids, because we have, to your Grim Reaper point, Chris, we have just 8 white kids in prison in New Jersey. And so to the accountability question, you know, a lot of elected
Hold up,
officials,
Ryan.
I know it takes a minute for that to land. Go ahead.
Ryan, you ain't just.
Well, you know.
Hold up, John. Let's go off. Hold up.
Yeah.
Did you hear what the Grim Reaper just said?
Yeah.
All the kids that's locked up.
It's worse. It's worse than $125. Yeah. But Chris is having a moment. But we want to make sure you get to the question, though. He's having a moment.
If this subject right now, right, this goes back to the top of our conversation. If the facts were these, that New Jersey is a state of 9 million people, and it has 8 Black kids incarcerated, the rest are white, and we spend about $500,000 to incarcerate each kid. Can you imagine what the response would be? What Governor Murphy and Steve Sweeney and the Attorney General and Coughlin, right? What our elected officials would be doing, right? But the reverse is true, that there are 8 white kids, the rest are mostly Black and then brown, and we spend that much to incarcerate Black and brown kids, and we mostly have accepted that that makes sense. And we've even created a narrative around why that makes sense. Well, you see them kids up and down Avon Avenue. You see how that goes. We've created a narrative to support that, which is shameful as a reality, right?
So, Ryan, let me tell you what I'm
hearing.
hearing.
You really haven't answered the question about why we should vote for Murphy again, right? Like if it's gotten worse, right? Like I'm the one always telling Chris Randall that, you know, no, electoral politics makes sense. Electoral politics works. You should have voted for Biden-Harris. You should vote for Governor Murphy. But I mean, honestly, right now, there's a serious question of, if it got worse under Murphy,
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
do we vote for Murphy again?
Because we have two,
And that's for both.
We have two options in a democracy, right? Participate in it or try to change it. And I do think that we can exercise our voices in a way that when we have held Governor Murphy accountable, so go back to the 94%. We had three specific demands leading up to that rally. One was to focus on youth justice by creating Youth Justice Task Force. Another was around the $15 minimum wage. The third one was around empowering people with criminal convictions to vote. And we made real progress on each of those as a result of that rally. It was very uncomfortable, Jonathan. You remember, no elected officials showed up to that rally, except for Cleopatra Tucker. She was the sole elected official.
They weren't talking to you, right?
And remember that? And that was a mess. But the reality was, I thought that was a beautiful moment because, to Chris's question, it was people holding the people, the constituents, the people, capital P, holding elected officials accountable. Because what we have learned is that no matter how changed sounding elected officials are, they're very often keepers of the status quo. And it requires us to organize ourselves to hold them accountable, to make them do what we want them to do. So Governor Murphy, for example, will do more of what we want when we hold him accountable to doing it. But I think what happens too often is, and this is a challenge, Chris, to your point about millennials. Like, I do think it would be a beautiful moment if millennials in New Jersey and here in the city of Newark just started running for office. Like, not waiting on the political machinery to bless you or make sure you're in line to become the next city council member, mayor, legislator, sheriff, county executive. But millennials just got organized, said, well, you know what? I'm running. I want to run for state legislator. We never had a black sheriff or a black county executive. I want to do that. I'm running. I think that is what accountability.
Now, Ryan, you know what I'm getting ready to say, because you and I had a personal conversation, me and you.
We did.
Ryan. And I said, Ryan, you got to run for office. And you told me,
right?
I ain't gonna repeat what you said.
You can.
I know what side you want, but I ain't gonna say what you said because But I will say this, Ryan.
Yeah.
The hardest thing for me, as a person who works with a legend like Jonathan Alston, who's an honorary grandchild of Baba Zaid, I think is that, to me, the hardest part for me is the people who are younger than me, who are 15, 16, 20. The hardest thing is, it looks like, if I give you 94% of my vote,
yeah,
and you would say, okay, Governor Murphy doesn't win without that percentage being as drastic as it was.
Yeah.
And we would say, if you look at the black vote toward Biden-Harris,
yeah, very
similar. And right in our face, an anti-Asian hate bill, a group who votes at a much lower clip, Democratic.
Mm-hmm.
Right in our face, in the face of a BREATHE Act, all of that, in the face of all of that, they get that. We get the Juneteenth holiday.
Mm-hmm.
It's harder to convince younger people that the ritual killing of black people means more than 94% of our participation.
Yeah.
That they want to maintain the ability to kill us so much that they're willing to sacrifice elections.
But here's the thing, right? So on that point, there's a role the governor plays, to be sure. The governor could say, whoever governor, I am calling for the legislature to pass all the bills that Baba Zaid is fighting for in police accountability. I'm calling for X number of, like, a very robust, reparative package of bills. But if you look in the last year, the New Jersey legislature, right, there's been all this talk about the killing of Mr. George Floyd and what happened and how can we protect against that in New Jersey. And the legislature in the last year has passed 0 meaningful police accountability bills. And we're fighting, following Zaid's leadership, we're fighting for our lives to get 1 or 2 passed. And so there's a role for the governor, but also, like, these state elected officials have mostly not been productive in the area of police accountability, closing the racial wealth gap. So I think this accountability mechanism particularly for young folks. To your point, Chris, I think that it has to apply to elected officials across the board. Yes, state level. Yes, the governor. Yes, the legislature. And here in the city of Newark as well. Now, for me, so just because I know you put that out there, look, I think people have different callings. You know, my desire is to work with elected officials and hold them accountable, stand with them when they're right. But my calling, I have zero desire to be an elected official.
Listen,
And
if you don't have no desire,
it's very hard.
You certainly don't want me around.
I think it's very hard as an elected official to say what you really think all the time. Very often elected officials are constrained by what.
So Ryan, you saying if you want an elected seat, you would, if I asked you if America was racist, you don't know.
Absolutely. Kamala knows America is racist, right? She was the first Black woman to be the Attorney General of California. She was the first Black woman a number of times. She knows why she was the first, because America is racist. But as an elected official, she's constrained, right? So what am I supposed to say? Okay, I got to have a that I do not love that space at all, which is why I wouldn't want to be an elected official. But I do think in a democracy, if you want to get things done, you got to work with them and you got to hold them accountable. And I think that's what happened. We very often fall short. And look, let's be really real. All the ceremony that Chairman Hamm talked about is designed to pacify us.
Mm-hmm.
So we get ceremony. We get it a lot. I don't think another group of people get ceremony more often than Black people.
But Ryan, to your point, Ryan, the governor has a role. The assembly passes, the legislature, then it goes to the Senate passes, then it goes to the governor's desk for signature.
Yep.
So to that point, there was the People's Bill, right? And the governor said 3 times, get that bill to my desk, which was been the first bill in the country to put forth a process to deal with coming out of COVID so that our neighborhoods will not be gentrified after COVID. But guess what? He said it 3 times. That bill never made it to his desk.
Right.
So that's when the people have to get involved. And we have to be on a steady stream of calling these senators and these assembly members and saying, why isn't this bill? Give me an explanation, until they're tired and they're blue in the face. We all have a role to play in this government. And it's holding them accountable and also holding their feet to the fire.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's a bill that the governor did say, get it to my desk, and it never got to his desk.
And Councilwoman, I think that does speak to Chris talked about millennials. Like, I don't think there's ever been a time when elected officials at any level check themselves out the game. It doesn't happen. There's rarely, I know very few instances where there's a succession plan. People get in office, whether they're Black, white, Latino, whoever, and they rock it until the wheels fall all the way off. And the goal of many is to die in office, and very often they do. And so I think there's not a turnover until people just run for office without asking for permission. And I think that's what this moment calls for, because I think in the state of New Jersey, particularly with the crazy system we have, there's a party line. And if you're on the party line, you get like a 40-point advantage over folks not on the line. It's very difficult to win an election in New Jersey if you're not chosen by the party. And so we have a state where in most cases, the party chooses who will represent of the electorate. And so what that means is, folks, I mean, I think the mayor is a very good example of somebody who was like, I'm going to build a base over 20 plus years, and I'm going to run off the line. And I think that is really what this moment requires. If people, particularly young people, start waiting for permission to run, and they run. And when they run, they challenge some of these elected officials who don't have the energy even often to get prepared for things, much less to hold on to their seats. And that's what I think a democracy requires.
And I want to bring Chairman Hamm. What do you have for that question that deals like, what should we vote for Governor Murphy? Like, he's not giving us everything a lot of the things that we wanted, we are not getting. And with some of the numbers getting worse, Is it a matter of voting for Murphy or not? And this really is an answer to Chris and my question. Hold on one second, Chairman Hamm. I need you are muted. Now you are unmuted. Well,
better.
Now you're
Are we
unmuted.
better?
I unmuted.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
The number of options are finite. We've already been, see, this discussion should have been, well, you did, in fairness to you, you've been having this discussion on this program. But, you know, we just went through the primary process. So in the primaries, the different people within parties run against each other who want to occupy that office, in this case, the governor. And the primary election determines who will be the party's candidate for governor. So we've been through the primary process. It's Murphy for the Democratic Party, and it's is his name Chitterelli? Is that his name? The winner of the Republican primary, I think that's his name. So in November, you will have the Democratic choice, the Republican choice. You may have a couple of independents. I haven't heard of any, but they seem to turn up at the last minute. Well, not the last minute, because they're on a different schedule. So they have until like September to get their petitions in and be on the ballot. And the reality is this. It's either going to be a Democrat or it's going to be a Republican. That's the reality. You know, politics is a brutal sport. It's like boxing. Politics is a lot like boxing. It's based on strength. It's not, you know, you can wish to beat Muhammad Ali. You know, you could dream about beating Muhammad Ali, but it's not until you step in the ring to fight Muhammad Ali do you know what reality is. And this is the reality that we have yet to come to grips with. I mean, we really can't hold anybody accountable unless we have the strength to hurt them. You know, unless you control a certain number of votes that can either help this person get elected or prevent this person from getting elected, then you really can't hold them accountable. You could talk bad about them, and there's a role for critiquing people. There's a role for it, because when you have nothing else, you have words, and words matter, and words can hurt, words can sting. But the point I'm trying to make here is that politics is based on strength. Yeah. Now, if we had, I mean, for instance, why is Kamala Harris the vice president? She didn't win one damn primary. Not one. She didn't even make it. She dropped out of the race in December. She's the vice president because Biden won and he chose her to be the vice president. Now, in the primary for president, there was a candidate who wanted to do something concretely for people. His name was Bernie Sanders. Right. He was going to eliminate student debt. He said he was going to think about Medicare for all. But our fathers killed the prophets. Yeah. So we rejected Bernie Sanders and we took Oatmeal Man. You took Joe Biden, who's been in the Senate since he was 29 years old, out of Delaware, the state where corporations go to get the most favorable incorporation possible. And he was a spokesperson for the credit card industry. The point I'm trying to make here,
and let me ask. So can I do? So let me just.
Let me finish this point, and I won't say anything else during the program. Politics is about strength. It's about your ability to marshal votes, to get those voters to the poll, and to beat your candidate. And until we come to a point, when I say we, I'm talking about the Black people who want change, who want real change. Until we get to a point of organization where we can produce the votes that will bring us to power, we're going to be having these conversations every year.
And so
I just wanted to, we're reaching the, well,
Can I say really?
But just for we're reaching the 8 o'clock hour. But yes, we're gonna get to you, Ryan. I just want to say that we're coming to the 8 o'clock hour. We have a guest, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, who's here. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to incorporate him into the conversation because I know he's coming in for this next half an hour, and we're still going to be talking about Juneteenth and reparations. So I'm bringing him into the conversation as well. And Ryan.
Sure. Hey, Dr. Jeffries.
Ryan, you can. Then we'll
sure. So I just wanted to say to the chairman's point about power. So tomorrow in the city of Newark, the People's Organization of Progress, Institute for Social Justice, and 50 other organizations, including the city of Newark, are hosting a Juneteenth rally and march in support of the Reparations Task Force bill. And I'm not one to guarantee things, but I have a lot of confidence that this bill will get passed. And the reason it will get passed, to the chairman's point about power, is because we're going to wield our collective advocacy, our collective power to make it so. And I think that's how things have always happened for us, that when we've organized ourselves, particularly from the ground up in our communities, we see these things change. Now, what we will see are elected officials who try to get us to move away from the word reparations. So why can't we create a racial wealth gap task force or a racial disparity task force? Like, why do you need to have the word reparations in it? And as we insist on it, I do believe we'll make that happen. So I encourage folks to join us tomorrow in the city of Newark at noon. We'll meet at the Lincoln Memorial on Market Street. There'll be some powerful speakers there. We'll then march to City Hall. We'll get there around 1:30 for some additional speakers. And the goal will be to get people to say the word reparations, right? To take back the power of the word, to be clear that there's a thing to repair and we need reparations to repair it.
And so thank you, Ryan Haygood, and thank you, Chairman Hamm. Before we bring Dr. Leonard Jeffries into the conversation, I do want to give. I know that both of you might be stepping out. I don't know what your time is. I do want to give you a chance to talk about this whole thing that you're doing, because you're working. It seems like you are working together to put pressure on politicians for this reparations bill. Can you tell us, more to, in that point of what is different about just studying the bill for it to be just shelved? Because it's not about reparations, it's about just studying for reparations. Why should we get excited about this, given the numbers that Ryan Haygood mentions every time we're on the show? Like, the average Black wealth is $175 for individuals, right? Compared to hundreds of thousands for white people collectively in the state of New Jersey. Given all of those numbers, given the numbers of incarceration of Black kids and the money that's spent on that versus the white kids not being affected, why should we care about the stuff that you're doing to study the problem?
Because the study is just the first part. So the study is that this task force would look into the role that slavery played in the foundation of New Jersey. But the second piece of the task force's work is to make policy recommendations around how to address the enduring harm and what kinds of investments must be made to address that enduring harm. So it's not a passive task force. It's a task force designed to really take action to help design a system to address the original sin in the state and the enduring harm around slavery. And look, that's the reason why it's being so fiercely resisted, because folks know that once a task force is created, we'll finally have a chance to deal with this thing we've not been willing to deal with, which are the vestiges of slavery and the enduring impact of slavery. And so I think that's why this task force is so important. And by the way, that's why it only happened in one other state in the country, because we've been willing as a country to do ceremonial things, but not really to drill down and fix structural challenges.
It was some substance.
And that's really what this is about.
Chairman Hamm?
I agree with everything that Ryan said. I agree.
Okay.
I agree with Ryan. But let me just say, I think it's important. Look, they don't even want to say the word. They don't even want to say the word. Scared to death. So I think if we can get a commission passed and it can make some actual recommendations, then that's the next level of the fight. You know, we're going from one level of fighting to another. We at the ground floor now. Look, if the reparations commissions come into existence at the federal level and the state level, and they do the work that they're supposed to do, and they make real concrete recommendations on reparations for slavery, we're going to have a massive struggle on our hands. There's going to be, you think we have a problem now with the Trump people? Wait till the recommendations come out from the Reparations Commission. We're going to have white backlash to the 10th power. But that's okay, because this is what we have to get. This is the struggle that we have to get to. I mean, all of this is going towards something. I mean, I know Dr. J will talk about it after, we get off, but you can see it. If you live long enough, you can see the vector of the forces that are at play. And we're headed toward a tremendous political struggle in this country, and there are going to be aspects of it that are going to be violent. It's already shown, they've already shown their violent side on January 6th, and there's going to be more violence. They're going to resist anything that will benefit Black people, poor people, working people in this country. They're going to resist it. And it's going to require massive struggle on our part. You know what my real hope is? I know, Ryan, this might make you unhappy. I hope they don't pass the damn bill. Because the longer we have to fight, the more we will get organized. The longer we have to fight, the more experienced we will become in political struggle and other forms of struggle. And this, in the long run, will benefit us and bring us to the victories that we will have in the future.
Yeah. And can I credit?
But when you do, I just have like the only question. Oh, I'm probably muted, am I? Oh no,
you're good.
All right. So the only question I have is that because we are, I just want you to answer and like who you're listening to in terms of hip hop, like favorite artist, individual. Because I definitely want to bring Dr. Jeffries in here for this conversation as well. And you can add in anything else you wanted to say to that. But in your last answer, I just want you to tell us who you're rocking now.
So I just want So
I think Ryan, you were.
I was going to say, very, very often I think what's difficult about this conversation, to your point, Jonathan, is that we know what the racial disparities are. We know what the harm is, and we know how to repair it. And yet we're asking for a task force as a way to get there, right? And very often when we ask for things that we deserve, the response is, well, there's no money available to do that, right? And that's ironic coming from a New Jersey that's every year in the top 1 or 2 wealthiest states in the country. And what's fascinating about that argument right now is that New Jersey has a $10 billion surplus. Like right now, $10 billion surplus. So what that teaches us, as we all know, is that it's never about the money. It's always about whether you prioritize making those investments. And that's really what this push for a reparations task force is about, is to create a roadmap that will finally begin to repair the harm from slavery. So on that point, although it's got some explicit language in it, Baba Zaid Muhammad, I've been thinking about Tupac's White Man's World, because he talks about empowering his Black nation, and he goes on to say, comma, reparations are due. And I feel like that's appropriate for this conversation. That particular line is appropriate for this conversation.
Tupac would have been 2 days ago.
2 days ago, empower my Black nation, reparations are due. I think that sums up what this conversation is about. I encourage folks to join us tomorrow here in the city of Newark, 12 Lincoln Memorial. Then we'll march to City Hall. and we're going to push for the reparations task force. We're going to encourage everybody to say the word being reparations. The bill, to Chairman's point,
You gonna have some of them shirts?
A7. Oh, and yes, Baba Zion, we have these shirts encouraging folks to say the word reparations. We're not talking about a racial.
Yeah, because Ryan did a wardrobe change after you presented your poster.
Councilwoman, I just took the jacket off. It was under there the whole time.
Right, and the final word for Chairman Hamm and include who you're listening to, what hip hop individual or group that is inspiring you in this reparations moment.
Well, to be absolutely truthful, since Brother Gil Scott-Heron got inducted into the Hall of Fame, I've been listening to a lot of Gil Scott, but right now what's on my mind is Public Enemy, Fear of a Black Planet.
Black Planet, all right. All right, Dave. All right.
So thank you so much, and of course, Ryan and Chairman Hamm, you are both free to stay for the next part of the conversation, but we do want to make sure we get into the legend, and we're so honored to have the esteemed Dr. Leonard Jeffries here on a Juneteenth weekend. We are honored. We are privileged to have you. Thank you so much for coming on our program again.
We can't.
Oh, let me unmute you, Dr. Jeffries. And what do you think about this conversation? We didn't hear anything that you just said, so welcome, Dr. Jeffries. And what do you think about this reparations conversation?
Well, certainly I am always glad to come together with our people when we're about serious business. And it was great to see and hear a group of our key folks talking seriously, making the necessary criticism, and also making it real.
Wow.
Our destinies, other people will. So that, and that's been the case. And every juncture in our history, there's been important turning points where we could have made a great leap forward. And somehow we got stopped or stymied or pushed back. So to see the flow of information and the ideas that that this family grouping put together, it's wonderful. But we have to be serious. All of you have enormous historical records of what you've done in terms of the struggle. But we have to, and I always put this out there, we have to be about systems. It's wonderful to have the analysis. It's wonderful to have the experience. It's wonderful to have the people ready to go. But you have to have a systems capability to make anything happen. You have to have a systems analysis to understand really how deep these questions are. And so when you put the systems analysis and the systems capability, then you have a continuous process of system development. So that I hate to get professional, but that's been a part of my life the last 50, 60 years, dealing with how can Black folk develop a systems analysis that will allow them to develop a system capability, and that system capability will allow them to develop a process that will allow them to continue to sustain a system. And so to have this conversation, it was wonderful. So I'm glad it is there. Anytime I can contribute or be a part of it, I want to be. And reparations is real. And so we've got everybody ask for reparations, and many people get it without any hesitation. There was reparations for the Japanese who were interned, not stripped of their humanity, not devastated and destroyed, and there was reparations for them. There are reparations coming out of America going toward the Middle East by the tune of billions of dollars coming out of the American experience, and the Americans had nothing to do with what was happening in the Middle East. However, reparations are taking place. Indemnities went after Haiti after the successful Haitian Revolution, and the Haitians were able to defeat their enemies. And in order to wipe out that enormous victory in the hills of Haiti, they came up with indemnities that the Africans who destroyed the slave plantations, who destroyed the slave owners, had to pay for that. So we need to look at these systems and how they work and begin to put it in place for ourselves and avoid, have our little, togetherness and whatnot. But it's deep systems. There are going to be reparations paid continually for other circumstances. We need to use that term. And we need to systematize it in the sense that Dr. John Henry Clark, my mentor, I have a book in my hand, Africans at the Crossroads.
Yes.
This is Dr. John Henry Clark, one of our greatest, up from Alabama, Mississippi. And he went on to lead us, legendary Africans in struggle. But his book title continues, Notes for an African World Revolution. And if we're going to even think in those terms, we have to think about reparations owed, what is owed us, but we need to think about reparations we have to give ourselves. We owe us to have a system where we earn money, make it work for ourselves, and don't waste it. And so that we have to have internal reparations. We got to make that a part of our vocabulary in real ways. We can't run away from it. And we have to show it can be done in ways that no one else had even thought of. Internal reparations. Every dollar that we spend without having a real true understanding of what that dollar can do. We need to educate our folks. Newark is a perfect example of what reparations could do and what devastation has resulted. Even building the highways in Newark was designed to destroy Black neighborhoods.
That's right.
You got to understand how deep Newark is. The Black Power Conference that happened in '67 was not in Detroit or Los Angeles or Atlanta. It was in Newark, New Jersey.
That's right.
And it came as a result of enormous struggles that have been waged with the police taking a particular role and devastating our people. We need to use Newark as a case study of what was done that was incorrect, but what can be done to correct it, and what systems need to be put in place. Most of you all are attached to these universities. Newark is now one of the leading university cities in the world. A good percentage of the population are university students, not coming from our communities, but coming from around the world. Newark's great institutions, NJIT, Rutgers, all the rest of them, are serving a world community where people bring in their ducats and put their children in these schools. We need to say an African from America should have access to these great universities. Many of them were sustained by slaves selling enslaved Africans. All of these, Georgetown, all of them, Princeton, Yale, Harvard, all of them benefited from the slave system profits being made. So we need to come up with a deep document, not just ready for the assembly, but ready for us and our people and what we need to do. And not just limited to Newark. Newark is an international community. And so we can start linking up with Nigeria, linking up with Trinidad, Tobago, linking up with the African nations on the continent. We not just talk about Libya, but understand what Libya represented. I was with Gaddafi when he came to the great celebration in Dakar, and then he had a chance to speak. And when he spoke, he was only 20 yards from Wade Nobles, myself, and a host of the Black folks that I brought. And so Gaddafi declared war on the United States and the Western world. I was there, my mouth dropped. I said, well, damn. And so he should have been prepared for the reaction that was going to come after that important speech that he made. And we need to get a copy of that speech and study it. It was in the face of the great monument that has been built representing where we should be going as African peoples, the Renaissance monument, the birth and rebirth of the African family. That's the symbol of where we need to go with these activities that we have to be about. So I'm going to join any of y'all that are serious and try to support what you're doing. I'm glad to hear the young and the old and the sisters and the brothers lay out their ideas, because it's all important. The struggle continues.
Hold on 1 second. Let me just having a.
Did you get in?
Hey, so do you have any questions to ask Dr. Jeffries, like Rhino or Zaid, Donna?
Hey, Charles.
I don't have any questions, but I do want to say peace and blessings to Dr. Jeffries. Dr. Jeffries, I have a photo of you with my auntie, Dr. Olivia J. Hooker from Oklahoma.
Yes.
Photo of you and her and my daughter together when you were at her house. And
that's your aunt.
Yes.
Oh, you never said the name. Now, y'all.
Yes.
Well, it's about family, and it's about this global family struggle that we have. So, and we're in a position to link it up. When you say Steve Biko, that should ring in our hearts in terms of him organizing young people who gave their lives. Right. Blood was shed. It's not just Steve Biko making a statement. The young people were mobilized and they stood up, and that gave strength to the African males in South Africa and the African females. So when he emerges out of that enormous struggle, strengthened by the blood that was given by the young people sacrificed in that particular movement, we need to link our struggles up. It's a global struggle. But we have a lot to say in Newark and New Jersey and the New York area about all of these items.
Yeah, definitely, most definitely. It was definitely good seeing you.
We can't let Dr. J, tell us about tomorrow as much as you can, because you're going to be in East Orange.
Yes, well, I'll be in East Orange. East Orange and Newark are the same communities. And that's what I say, because I was born on Central Avenue at Women and Children's Hospital at 10th Street, but I lived on 14th Street. And so when we went around the corner to 15th Street, that was East Orange. So for us to be making these distinctions between these various communities, that's cool. But for me, I see an African global community that has come together and has a role to play. That's significant. I will be in East Orange, and I'll also be in Newark because I claim both spaces and places. And I'll be supporting the mayor of East Orange because that's a part of the global African community that I'm a part of. And I'll be supporting certainly Mayor of Newark, Ras Baraka, his brother, his family, his father, his mother, have been a part of the growth and development of our people. His grandmother and grandfather were friends of my grandmother and grandfather. And so it's about family. And to see Raz step out and then reach out and link up to Ghana, that's timely and necessary. And so there's a plan that we need to be put in place that we need to approve among ourselves without worrying about what white folks say. We need to have our plan and then let them make adjustments to our link to African gold and diamonds and oil and precious metals. Newark is one of the greatest ports in the world, and we don't have a stake in it at all. But the world's wealth passes through Newark. People fly in all over the world to Newark Airport. And Newark's railroad system is key and crucial to distribution of goods. We need to see another world about our power, and put the little things that are irritating aside and go after the big things. I see all those universities coming up in Newark. I say, goodness, but we should have, if you're going to be in Newark and benefiting from the tax exemptions and having this space, then the Black population should be educated in Newark and have a space in those institutions.
Absolutely.
So that we need to come up with something serious And I hope it happens before I get out of here, because you all may not realize, as good as I'm looking, I'm still heading toward 85, and I ain't about no jive, but I'm about the serious deal. And so I feel Malcolm. I had a chance to know him. I feel Muhammad Ali. Had a chance to know him. I was in Zaire when the great bout took place. I didn't go there for the match. I went there to take care of some African connection, Pan-African work that we needed. But I was there for 2 weeks. At the time that my wife and we stayed in the hotel in Zaire. And isn't that funny? We got Zaire on floating, the name floating around. But the beautiful thing was, the person in the hotel room next to me, I told my wife, the brother, he's in the shower. He can't sing. He just out of tune, off tune, etc. And then later, when I came out of my room and he came out of his, the brother I was beaten down in the ground, unmerciful. I just beat him down. Was Hugh Masekela. Hugh Masekela was in the room next door. Yes, we joked about that, and so we have to see ourselves as a global African family with particular spaces and places that we have to make sacred. Newark is a sacred space in terms of the African world struggle, and we have to feel it and make it real. And the Murphys and the others will be there. And of course, you got the vice president is doing the best that she can. And you've got Biden and people who are thinking that he might not even be able to walk down the steps of the Air Force One or the presidential jet. But I see him coming down those stairs. He said, "You ain't going to catch me falling again." He grabs a hold of that rail and makes sure that he's stepping. But he knows that he stepped out with power in his new rebirth because Black folk gave it to him. So we need to name it and claim it. White folks know. That's why they try to block Atlanta. That sister put that stuff together in Atlanta, and then they got those votes in there. So we're in a game, but it's a game for life. It's not a game. It's a game to win. So the last time I saw Hugh Masekela was when 2,000 of us met in South Africa. 2,000 leaders from the African world. And Black America was represented also, including Mayor Dinkins and others that didn't present as powerfully as they should have, but 2,000. And we were sitting there with Mugabe and others trying to come up with a strategy. And then they had a sister come out to imitate Miriam Makeba, and she was wonderful. They closed the curtain, and then the next person came to present himself, and it was Hugh Masekela in the flesh. And thousands of Black folk, they was dancing Mugabe. You think of Mugabe as a quiet man. No, Mugabe was up and dancing. People called me from Ghana. They said they saw me dancing all over the place. Yes, it was a time to celebrate because the next day, the 2,000 people met in assembly to map out a plan. They were having celebration in one evening, and the next evening they met and they started planning. How can we link up the African world? It's our time. Africans at the crossroads, and systems have to be put in place to sustain us. So, brothers and sisters, thank you very much for allowing me to have a few words. And I'm here with my Queen Mother and Queen in terms of the African world in a real way, Dr. Rosalind Jeffries. Yes, they gave us all Africa's name. They installed us in their systems. And my name in Newark, the birth name on the 10th Street Children's Hospital, was Leonard Jeffries Jr. So I'm Little Lenny. But in the global world community, the Africans have given me their stool names. Nana Kwekujira Ajiman II. That includes 2 or 3 royal Asante names combined to put on me. And my wife's Nana Abibio. And we have to see that link, that the struggle continues. And we're on a victorious path. Just let me say that. But put our systems in place to sustain ourselves. And don't be embarrassed. Raise the issues when you have to raise it. The fact that you can have a handful of white folks in the jails in New Jersey and Latino and African people filling the jails. When I grew up, the Irish and the Italians and others went to jail also. So what happened? We're no longer jailing white folks. We need to look at that whole question of incarceration. And one of our sisters, very close to me, Alexander, yes, Michelle Alexander. She's a wonderful, brilliant African woman. And her husband just passed last year. And we were in Chicago for that celebration. And her sister, who was a Pan-Africanist, she was the roommate of my nephew, Dr. Hassan Jeffries, for 10, 15 years.
Your nephew gave us a very good book on the Lowndes County Freedom Organization. That's too. We got to shout that out.
That's right. And he's edited another one. That was his PhD dissertation. And of course, he dedicated it to everybody. He talked about everybody that helped him. But my brother said, go to the first page, and there I turned to the first page, and at the top of it was just a few words: to Uncle Lenny for everything. So these youngsters who have been able to produce know that they stand on the shoulders of giant men and women, grandparents, grandmothers, and that's the strength we need. While we play the games that politics calls for, while we play the games that's in the larger world arena, we have to have an African, serious, deadly game that we are putting in place, because it's life or death for us.
Mm-hmm. I want to shout out our own Bashir Akinyele, who having a full hand in the shaping and the production of the Juneteenth action in East Orange tomorrow. So I wanted to shout out. Bashir has taken the reins of ASCAC, the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization.
That's right.
Taking the reins of that in the Jersey area, and is taking that on quite seriously. And I'm very proud of what he's doing, because he's trying to he comes out of our walk of life with the nation, and he was up under the Black Panther Party, and is starting to put together what you're just talking about at the top of the conversation, the question of understanding systems, right? And we had systems from the beginning.
We created systems.
That's the wisdom of classical African civilization studies.
That's right.
Right? Because those are the original systems of the world that our ancestors gave everybody. That's right. So I'm proud of
harmonizing with the laws of the universe, the coming together of the Nile, the Blue Nile, the White Nile, the Atabara coming in from Ethiopia. And then they were able to lay the foundations for civilization and culture, because they understood the laws of the universe are part of what life is all about. Mm-hmm. So yes, we are on our way in spite of the difficulties that we have, and we need to celebrate it in every way we can.
Charles, I hope Charles can hear me, because we got to figure out now what you missed. Because we had a brilliant, beautiful sister on there, who's running the new Harriet Tubman Museum way down in Cape May, right? Okay. So the ancestors been working on the handful of people that we got down there. The ancestors been working on them, and they're trying to shape some things up down there. And she's opening that museum up tomorrow on Juneteenth, right? So I just want to shout out, because that's what you missed. I was going to pair y'all together to have that conversation, but we got to figure out how to take you down there and go see some of that and share your wisdom, and just walk on that space that ancestor roamed, who's still making folks uncomfortable with her powerful self.
Well, the thing is, and I'm glad you raised it, because things are coming together. Most people say, Dr. J, you're part of Newark, New Jersey, East Orange, Montclair, all of that, which is true. But I also got links to South Jersey. My wife's family, you have to go, they have roots in South Jersey, but all the way down to the tip of Jersey, I got connections. My buddy, he was the vice president of the Jewish fraternity at Lafayette College. I was the president at Jewish College. 2 boys from New Jersey, was in charge of 100 Jewish fellows in the Pi Lambda Phi fraternity. And Dr. Dan Wooten, MD, is from Cape May. He just
Wow.
to go down there and to greet. And my wife was able to go into her computer and she pulled out his whole story, and just amazing. So I would go down there just to link him spiritually with this Cape May thing that you're talking about, because that's what's happening. And then Rosalind was also able to pull out of the computer a brother named Dr. Gene Deloche, and he is from New York, Piermont, got his education at Lafayette College and Tougaloo down south, and then he got a PhD in engineering at Polytechnic in New York and all. But Gene Deloche, and he's alive and well, he is responsible for thousands of Black young men and women that became engineers. He's produced more engineers than anybody in history. He also was prominent enough to become the first Black and the only Black who's been the head of the American Engineering Association. But Gene him and I, we're going to be collaborating on putting some of this enormous history together. He's a Lafayette College graduate. Dan Wooten's a Lafayette College graduate. Len Jeffries is a Lafayette College graduate. So we may have to put some pressure on Lafayette to set aside some seats for the people of African descent and Latino and Native Americans, so that they have a place at Lafayette College. One of these. I
found him.
Oh, you did find him?
I did. It's the first time I'm hearing you mention him. We're gonna sound the drum and put it right back out there.
That's right.
Dr. Eugene Deloche, yes.
And he is so fantastic. Just a nice personality, but a wonderful personality. He helped to set up the engineering department at Howard University. Wow. But then when the opportunity came to set up a school of engineering at Morgan State, he went there, and it's named after the Mitchell family, the famous Baltimore Mitchell family of political leaders and community leaders.
Yeah.
Yes, Clarence Mitchell was a part of that. Yes. Wow. So look, we can have these little disagreements between how we're going to do this and how we're going to lay that, but we have a family commitment. We're the beginning of humankind. We've taken it to its highest levels, and we can have that as our motto, not whether we're going to fit into Murray's pocketbook or someone else's pocketbook. We have to put the African pocketbook there, and that's where we're going to raise our babies and our youngsters. So all of you are part of the Jeffries extended family. So you can't run away. That Jeffries, Barack,
I ain't got enough to run away from nothing.
Jeffries is on y'all.
Well, Dr. Jeffries, as we wrap up, I always love that you always mention your wife, your queen, and you're going to have to come back and you're going to have to tell us how you met your queen. But that's for the next segment.
What we ought to do is have her on. I don't think she's been on.
Yeah, have them both on, and we can kind of do how they met conversation. That was such a successful one we did with Jonathan's parents. But Dr. Jeffries, what are you listening to these days? Were you listening to any hip hop these days?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I got messed up last night because they had a whole thing on Ella Fitzgerald. It was unbelievable. It went on for hours.
Where'd you see it?
It was on the TV.
Yes.
Was it PBS? Oh, it was unbelievable. And what she went through and how she had to come up from being beat.
People don't realize Ella had to survive the streets. People don't realize about it.
That's right. The things that she had to do. And then she had a tisket. When I grew up in New York, I took sax lessons. I had 3 saxes, including a tenor and an alto. But she was singing all those songs that we had to do. No, it's an amazing story of Ella. And then I said, well, you put Ella together with a whole lot of these others, and you see how these sisters, how she went to Berlin and hit Berlin by storm, and got into the bebop and all of this. Everybody, that should be a learning session for everybody, male and female, young and old, white and black. The Ella story.
First lady of jazz. Yes, ma'am.
That's
Yes,
right.
sir. Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, we're glad we got you in. Right, we're gonna let you get some rest because we got a long day tomorrow. We're gonna be in the streets out here, right,
Okay.
making a little noise, right?
Right.
And I know you got some teaching to do and then some rounds to make. We're gonna go ahead and let you do that. It's always an honor to have you, sir. Right.
Okay. Pleasure to be with.
And next time we got to bring Dr. Rosalind on with you because Dr. Rosalind's story is incredible. Her work is incredible. Her mind is incredible. And it's a reason why y'all together.
And then
we got to talk some more about Tulsa too. We got to talk some more about Tulsa.
We should have done a segment on Tulsa.
Yeah, because
that's what
as you were talking about reparations, Tulsa just went through a whole thing with reparations. Some of the survivors there, yeah.
And Tulsa was just one of the many cases.
Right.
In which Atlanta, there was in 1906 and 1919, you had the Red Summer of 1919, 25 so-called urban rebellions because Black men had come back from
World War I,
where they had been the heroes of World War I, and white folks were upset to see that. In fact, they named the Harlem Regiment the Hellfighters of Harlem.
369.
Right, and so and it's the French that came with the Croix de Guerre to give to these Black men. And as quiet as it's kept when they had the victory parade up Fifth Avenue, it was led not by white men, not by Italians, not by Irish, not by any. Black men led the victory parade up, and they were not in U.S. military formation. They were in French formation, in French uniforms, carrying French arms, and they did not stop at 110th Street with the parade ending. They kicked it and kicked right on into Harlem, past 116th Street, past 125th Street, past 145th Street. And at 155th Street, they got a monument. They got a George Washington monument to the Harlem Hellfighters. So we got a hell of a history, and we need to learn how to tap into it and share that empowerment.
Yes, sir.
Definitely. Most definitely.
Yes, sir.
Bless.
All right, sir.
Well, thank you, Dr. Jeffries, and have a blessed day tomorrow.
Okay, and we got to talk about not just we talk about a blessed universe for African peoples. Let's see it writ large, because we got to see the babies coming in and the others coming in, and we got to prepare something for them. And we don't have no excuses. Put the excuses behind you, and then kick it hard.
Yes.
Thank you all. Really,
thank you, sir.
Much respect.
Love respect, sir. All right.
So DJ Rhino, we're going to pass it over to you, but can you just talk a little bit? I had the opportunity to speak to Ed because we're in June, which is Black History Month. And I don't know,
Music History Month.
Black History, Music History Month. And I was surprised. I was listening to conversation on how it got started, and come to find out that Kenny Gamble and his wife kind of started it under Jimmy Carter, and then it went on to be passed as legislation under Bill Clinton. So can you just give us some, and that music is a lot of the music that the hip hop samples and so on and so forth. So can we start there, sir?
So, well, there you go. The shirt that I got on right now, this is the Sounds of Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, that's right.
Philadelphia International Records. That's Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff. And yeah, man, I mean, they put out some of the greatest music, and this is a Black-owned label. So when we talk about blacks, that's why I'm wearing it, because when we talk about Black music, you're talking about all the way Black. You know what I'm saying? Even the label that put it out. You know what I'm saying? But they wrote and produced some of the greatest, most. These classics are going to be eternal. We're all going to be gone, and these songs are still gonna live on. Songs like I Love Music.
In the class of 79, ain't no stopping us now.
Yeah, I Love Music by the OJs. I Love Music by the OJs. Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. Teddy Pendergrass and so many, the Jones Girls, Lou Rawls. They had so many great.
Early Morning Love.
Oh man,
you can't get enough of.
You'll Never Find. All of that good stuff, man. that we grew up listening. I knew I grew up listening to this stuff, man. My parents and my grandparents, they always had this stuff playing. And then, you know, as I got older and got into hip hop and we start sampling all of these same songs. You know what I'm saying? And even songs that didn't get play on the radio, we got into those sampling those songs and making those songs popular later on. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like the connection to hip hop right there.
Right.
But yeah, definitely big ups to Gamble and Huff and
I wish we could get hold of them.
Exactly, right. If we can talk to them. I just saw an interview with them recently too with somebody. But
that's an Ed Connect. You gotta get Ed. You gotta make that request, Ed. Yeah.
That's Ed all the way. That's Ed all the way. Most definitely. But you know, I want to say happy birthday to Kendrick Lamar. He had a birthday just yesterday on the 17th. Kendrick Lamar. I haven't heard from this brother in a while, but I know he's working up on some stuff. From what I hear, he's working up on some new work. So because he's, you know, anytime you talk about who's from now, who of today, you know, from today's hip hop artists, do you think is really saying anything and bringing a message or, you know, bringing anything forth? And his name always comes up, like always. Number one, it's always Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole. You always hear that. And Kendrick Lamar has really been holding it down for the people, man. You know, he keeps his connection to the streets because that's how it always works. You know what I'm saying? Run DMC did it, LL did it, Melly Mel did it. You know, Public Enemy did it. You know, you got to keep your connection to the streets if you're going to do it. You gotta know.
My Jada Kiss did it, and it's funny, Rhino. I went and watched the video with Kendrick Lamar and Beyonce. I must have watched that like 5 or 10 times when they did that on one of the. Oh my gosh, that was so hot. I mean, but yeah, Kendrick is just.
And that's another thing, like his showmanship. Like he's really good on stage doing live shows. His energy is bananas. I don't know where he gets it from, the breath control and all of that. He's crazy with it. So definitely happy birthday to Kendrick. And then Kendrick Lamar's biggest inspiration, Tupac Shakur, had a birthday
50
day before on the 16th.
Oh.
Yep. On the 16th, he would have been 50 years old.
New York State jail cell because his mama and her comrades were fighting for their life in the New York Panther 21 case, one of the biggest criminal trials of its time. And had they been convicted, you all the political prisoners I'm talking about now, that's 21 in one sentence.
Yeah.
That's what they were looking at, right?
Yeah.
21 were looking at life. For some conspiracy to blow up botanical gardens and all this kind of foolishness. By the grace of the God of the ancestors, they were cleared, but hardly anybody else was cleared after that. But it is in that mix of tension and struggle that this young man who became the most famous cover of the Black Panther Party was born and would set so much fire into the world of hip hop. You got to give us your perspective as a hip hop master, right? What should we be taught? How do we appreciate Mr. Tupac Shakur at 50? Now, y'all, while you just went mute.
You said, how should we?
Yes.
Appreciate
it. According to DJ Rhino himself.
I mean, I have a coworker of mine. We're real close, and he's a huge Tupac fan. And we always talk about this conversation always comes up. What would Tupac be doing today if he was still around? Would he still be rapping? Would he be an activist? Would he be a politician? You know what I mean? Like
acting.
Yeah, and I believe he would definitely be an activist. He would still be an activist because he's always been an activist, even through his rap career. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I think he'd really be in that position. I can't see him going into the political field. I could see him challenging a lot of politicians. You know what I'm saying? Because he was one of those types that would definitely call you out. You know what I mean? Whether it be in his music or in an interview or something like that. You know, Tupac was very vocal. You know what I mean? So you know,
and Rhino,
you remember when he went through the whole thing with Dolores Tucker?
Yes.
Yeah, so you know, he was very vocal. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I mean,
I know they said Jada Pinkett just released a new a poem by Tupac. Did you get a chance to read that?
Nah, I didn't read it yet, but I saw some posted about it. Yeah. Did you read it?
No, I have. I just seen the article, but I haven't had an opportunity to read it yet either.
Yeah, I gotta check that out.
One of my younger cousins, comrades, her name is Aisha Obafemi. She's did a lot of work in the music business, but back in the heyday of X Clan, they had a group that supported X Clan known as Black Watch, right? And Aisha came through Black Watch. Aisha is the daughter of Fulani, Sunni Ali, and Ahmed Obafemi. And I, you know, Ahmed was one of my major teachers, and Fulani was a rough system of the party. I spent some time in Cuba with
I remember the Black
Watch. Aisha got a bad book, you know, coming out on her relationship with Pac. I have just lost my train of thought. This is where I was going. Donna, do you know the Orange, New Jersey connection to Tupac? Where's she go?
I believe I'm here. I believe the connection is, you know, God rest his soul, but the young man that passed, and his name escapes me right now, I know that he was a protege of Tupac. That Tupac was working with him. So I do know that. Is that what you're relating to?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm sorry. Please say his name, because I feel bad that I can't say his name right now. It escapes me, and we should, you know.
He happens to be Sekou Odinga's son, and he was killed shortly after Pac was killed, and a lot of folks do believe that those killings were linked, and that goes far beyond, you know, Biggie, Pac, East Coast, West Coast. You know, Pac was, you know, represented something beyond the space that he was in, that the system was always deathly afraid of. He was a Shakur.
Yeah.
Shakur, you know, and that meant something, right? So I definitely had to do that, and I had to get that shout out into that. I didn't know Pac personally, you know, but folks who, you know, all my young heads who were his age, all did. Mitty knew him very well, right? And I can name a bunch of folks who we know, you know, who were like around that 49, 48, 50ish age. April and all of them, they all knew each other well. So at some point we really need to unpack that and bring some of those folks on it and really, you know, take apart the layers of Pac's legacy, because it's heavy. Now, Chris has jumped back on it. Chris is in that, is actually younger than that, right? But he's also a Cub, you know. The
first hip hop album I ever got. DJ Rhino, you ready? Don't blank. Don't do it. First hip hop album I ever got was "Are You Still Down" by Tupac Shakur.
You always say that. You've been saying
That's
that
the first hip hop album I ever received.
And what's your favorite cut on the album?
My mother referred to him as a Phoenix little boy.
That's right.
And my favorite cut on that album is Hellraiser.
Now we talked about a Phoenix. I can't talk about Pac without talking about his incredible stepfather, Dr. Mutulu Shakur, who was still in prison. We were talking about reparations and atonement and all that, the South African concept. Mutulu gave us that concept here in the United States, right? In the 70s, right? And then he went to China and studied acupuncture, right? And came back and trained doctors here in New York and in this part of the country in acupuncture to help break the whole chain of drug addiction in our community. It was then that the state came after him.
So one of the things that I think is difficult for me, I think, you know, and this is why, you know, Bob, it's just me, you talk. This is why I resent DJ Rhino so much. You know, if he was here, I'd tell him to his face. But the reason I resent DJ Rhino so much is because here I am. Mr. Austin can tell you, I preached on Blue in the Face. I'm playing Tupac songs for the kids, all that. DJ Rhino wear one shirt and all the kids go listen to the music. Make me sick to my stomach. I mean, I'm really sick of it. I'm telling you, if I ever see DJ Rhino, if I ever could tell him to his face, I'm gonna tell him how I feel about the fact. I stay up all night, write a lecture, and then DJ Rhino put on a shirt, and then all the kids are like, "Oh, it must be dope." DJ Rhino like it. It's really sickening. I just want you to know that if I ever see DJ Rhino, I'm gonna tell you.
Yo, but I gotta say, Hellraiser is one of my favorites off that album too. Definitely, that's definitely one of the standout cuts off that album. I always felt that too.
Well, as we getting down to the 5-minute hour, I don't
Yeah,
want
there's
to
a couple of things I gotta share with y'all. Hold on,
I'm just Rhino. You can go. I'm saying we're 5 minutes, but I want to take because we missed this on Mother's Day, and I don't want to be with a panel full of men, except Chris, and and say Happy Father's Day to you, and I wish you a joyful Sunday with your family. Go ahead, DJ Rhino.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, I've been.
I got a bunch of this, but that Baba stuff, I got a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, you always calling everybody your daughter and stuff like that.
Yeah, they call me Baba, so you got to claim them.
Baba, that's right. That's right. Also, but I think earlier somewhere we were mentioning something about some of the sisters in hip hop. I want y'all to look out for somebody named Mumu Fresh. Her original name is, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Maymuna Youssef. But she goes by the name Mumu Fresh, M-U-M-U Fresh. And she comes out of the Baltimore, D.C. area. She was born in Baltimore, raised in D.C. And she's got some serious work. I want y'all to look. I put the link in the chat. But I want y'all to look for it's really like a mini movie, almost like 15 minutes or something like that. It's a mini movie that she put together called Work of a Rap God. It's real serious, it's real powerful. Just how it starts off is it just kind of grabs you and it pulls you in. But it's something that we, and especially the younger generation, should kind of take a look at. You know what I'm saying? It's real powerful. Again, her name is Mumu Fresh. I put the link up in the chat, but you can look for it on YouTube. Like I said, her real name I think is Maymuna Youssef, but she goes by Mumu Fresh out of the Baltimore DC area.
Listen, per usual, Baltimore come in and say today for everybody. Per usual, it's fine.
Yeah, just like Sal Rock's from B More, right?
I didn't know that. Oh, okay.
DC rather.
You got to get her. Yeah, we got close to getting her.
We got to get Sal Rock on there. Not Sal Rock, not Sal Rock, but not Sha Rock, but Sal Rock.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's the sister from DC. Sha Rock is from the Bronx.
That's what
Sha Rock is from DC. We got to get her on too though, because she's pretty deep. And then last but not least, again, staying on the sisters, the females in hip hop. I don't know if any of y'all got to see the last verses between Eve and Trina. Eve came in. You know, Eve comes out of Philly.
Yeah.
Trina comes out of Miami. So they did the verses, and it was pretty good. Honestly, I didn't know really what to expect from it when I first heard of it coming up, but I watched it and it was pretty good. You know what I mean? And it was strange because I think, you know, for me, in my opinion, I don't want to get too many spoilers, but I mean, in my opinion, Eve had the hits. She had more of the hits that we all know. That everybody, you know, knows these hits. You know, bouncing to these hits. At least up here in the Northeast, right? But then Trina had a lot of energy with her because, you know, Miami got that bounce, and then she also was able to bring up features. Like she had Trick Daddy come up and do one of the songs with her. The thing with Eve was located in London at the time, so she was kind of out of place. She didn't have any features. She didn't have any. It was just her and her DJ. So that was kind of like points against her as far as the energy in the room. You know what I'm saying? When she went on, but again, Eve had the hits, so you still felt Eve when she went on. It was no doubt like Eve held her own, even without, you know, having any features, anybody come out there. But Eve held her own, and Trina definitely. I learned a lot more about Trina. I was never really a big Trina fan, being a Northeast hip hop kind of dude that I am. But Trina, you know, watching that verses, I realized Trina got a lot of decent verses on like she got a lot of good features. Like when she features on other people's songs, she's got a lot of decent verses. She sounds good. And, you know, that's my first time really getting into Trina like that. You know what I'm saying? So I've been peeping that out. But That's also on YouTube. The verses between Eve and Trina. I think it went down on Pac's birthday. It went down on the 16th. So y'all can check that out. But I know we're getting out of time. But that's all I wanted to throw at you. Again, check out Moo Fresh. It's called It's called Work of a Rap God. By Moo Fresh. It's real deep, man. Check it out, man. I've been showing my people all day today, and we just been getting into it.
And one last thing I want to say is, as a person who is, I've said this to Baba Zaid in private, who is stuck with the cross of being connected to the Black Panther Party in a very deep and spiritual way. The legacy of Tupac kind of looms real heavy, particularly in Baltimore, all of that. And so he went to the Baltimore School of the Arts and all of that. So
right,
it's a very interesting sort of thing. I haven't quite made sense of how I feel about Tupac Shakur yet, because it is very layered and complicated and difficult. And all of the people who are connected to that legacy in a particular kind of way are a little crazy. And at the same time, deeply spiritual and vulnerable and all of that. And so it's tough.
All right. Well, we come to another end of another show.
Mm-hmm.
And so for Father's Day, we run a little bit late, but I do want to take the time. Zaid, you've already mentioned some Juneteenth events in East Orange tomorrow. Ryan mentioned the rally. Do you want to go over that real quick? We can't hear you. You're on mute.
No, Jonathan muted me. Yeah, Lincoln Monument, 12 noon, we're marching for reparations. And on at 1 o'clock, Dr. Jeffries is going to be at City Hall in East Orange.
And then also at 1 o'clock in Monty Irvin Orange Park on Central Avenue in Orange, New Jersey, Assemblywoman Timberlake will have her first annual Juneteenth Family Day from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. And also the Source of Knowledge from 12 noon to 6 will be having the block party as well. So Source of Knowledge in North on the back street, that's I can't think of the name of that street, but right behind the store, they're having an event from 12 noon to 6. So there's a lot going on. Try to get out and get some history and learn what this holiday is about and get to know some of the issues that are going on in our community. And happy Father's Day.
And if anybody, thank you again. And if anybody wants to just hear me do my thing musically, check me every Saturday on twitch.tv/RhinoCMZ every Saturday at 3 p.m. That's 3 in the afternoon. Saturday afternoon, 3 p.m. It's called the Saturday Shake Up with CMZ at 3. Check me out. That's twitch.tv/RhinoCMZ, just like you see on the screen, RhinoCMZ. Twitch.
Ride.
Can you do me a favor?
All right, and Zaid, take us out. Zaid, take us out.
We should have been out 2 minutes ago. Y'all kept talking.
Well, go ahead, Zaid. We got that.
We'll see you next week. Same black times and saying you don't stop. You're listening to America's number one hip hop talk.
And thank all of our guests from the 8 that were here with us today. Thank you for everybody that participated.
Dr. Towns, Brian Haygood, Lawrence Hamm, and of course our own DJ Rhino. It's good to have. Good to have Chris back in the mix, because Chris always brings it with the layers, the knowledge, the research, right, and the funnies.
Thank you. And we are off. Thank you.